For the ones who know safety isn't a catchphrase, it's a culture. And the ones who help make sure everyone makes it home safe. For the safety-minded who watch everyone's backs, Grainger offers supplies and solutions for every industry, as well as safety assessments and training to keep your facilities safe and your people safer. Call, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Isn't it about time for somebody's favorite radio program?
Yeah.
97.3 ESPN presents The Sports Bash with Mike Gill.
When I'm driving, I got a guy on the radio who talks to me. I can't see him, but he talks to me.
Now, live from inside the Ocean Casino Resort Studio, here's Mike Gill.
What a night at Citizens Bank Park as the Phillies beat the Brewers last night on a return from Rhys Hoskins, which was, as the Brewers television voice put it, goosebumps, chilling night to see Rhys Hoskins get the applause, the standing O that he ended up getting last night. Very emotional moment for Rhys Hoskins, his family. It was pretty cool. It goes to show you once again, that ballpark is electric right now. It's electric up there. It's crazy every night. And, of course, the Phillies winning again last night against a good Brewers team. Great game from Wheeler. How about David Dahl? Welcome aboard, baby. Dave Dahl, a former All-Star, saying, hey, consider me for the Midsummer Classic. He goes yard last night for the Phils. They win 3-1. But really, it was a moment in the second inning that only Dan Baker can encapsulate the way that he announces players as they step to the plate, including Rhys Hoskins, who came up in the second inning.
Now batting for Milwaukee, number 12, designated hitter, Rhys Hoskins.
And about a 45-second ovation from the fans, but Dan Baker kind of giving it to you there. The designated hitter, Rhys Hoskins, they actually played his former Phillies walk-up music there, and the place is just jumping last night. I mean, they just absolutely were going crazy for Rhys Hoskins last night, who, of course, belts a home run later on in the game. It's the only run the Brewers would score in the game. It was kind of a fun night. It was kind of reminiscent of two guys who, play, rec ball together, and then they end up going up against each other in high school with him and Real Muto. He steals a base on Real Muto. Then he tries to score. He gets thrown out at the plate, and Real Muto gives it back to him like, hey, we got you here. Just a fun night at the ballpark last night. And we'll get more into the game, but, it goes to show what we say many times here, and we never back off of this, is no matter what the opinion is of the Philadelphia sports fan, you don't get nights like that in most places. You know why? They're not getting 40,000 people on June 3rd to go watch a game against the Milwaukee Brewers, and they're not giving you that kind of adulation as the opposing player. I mean, it was just a special moment in the game, and you might say it's kind of weird. Rhys Hoskins was, he wasn't the most popular player. He wasn't the most hated player. I mean, he was a good, solid player for the Phillies, but they appreciate what he went. Whether he was good, whether they complained about him, whether they thought he was the best player, the worst player, they wanted him gone, they didn't want him back, they wanted him back, whatever it may have been, they appreciated that he was one of us. And anytime when people talk about, getting booed and the fans are this, the fans are that, they might be in the moment. But when push comes to shove, they appreciate. They appreciate more than the players probably know. And Rhys Hoskins, look, he's not the most popular player in Phillies history by any stretch of the imagination. But you saw what he meant to the fan base last night. When he gets announced he's the sixth hitter playing for the Brewers, and they have to pause the game by 50 seconds or more to allow the fans to show, it just tells you all you need to know. So all of the opinions that we always hear. And it was all week. It was the weirdest thing how anybody could have thought that Rhys Hoskins wasn't going to get a standing ovation. I mean, I just don't understand how anybody could have thought otherwise. I really don't. How anybody could have thought that the Philadelphia Phillies fans were actually going to do anything other than what happened last night. Anything other than what happened last night was out of the question. There wasn't a thought that entered my mind that they would do anything other than make it a special moment for Rhys Hoskins. And that's exactly what it was last night. It was encapsulated by the Brewers broadcast, who also got, kind of emotional in watching the whole thing take place.
I mean, I got goosebumps.
Yeah, it's really cool. Really cool moment right there. See those signs in the stands. Amazing.
Yeah. Obviously, his wife was there, the family was there, but that's another point that the broadcaster brings up there. People brought signs last night, welcome home, Rhys. I mean, this is a guy who, again, at times people were ready to move on from because of some of the frustrations they had with him. He was a very streaky hitter, terrible defensively. Look, I'm not going to sugarcoat that. I was very tough on Rhys for his defense, and he wasn't like a guy who it's funny. The Phillies put random dudes in their Wall of Fame, like Von Hayes is in the Wall of Fame. So Rhys Hoskins is probably going to be a Wall of Fame type of player for this team. I saw all I needed to know last night. No, I mean, I didn't think otherwise, but I saw all I needed to know last night to make me feel like the Phillies, will recognize, man, this guy meant something to our city. And, for whatever reason, why fans felt that he was what he was, he was a homegrown guy who was part of the bad times and helped get them to the good times. And he was a guy who had a hit and a key moment and a key series. I mean, that series that he had against the Braves in the postseason a couple of years ago, when he's doing it against a Braves team that, it wasn't the Braves series, it was the Padres series. He had the moment against the Braves, but it was that Padres series where he had 4 homers in the 5 games. He knocked in 7 runs in that series against San Diego. And he wasn't great in those playoffs. He only hit 159 in the playoffs. So some would say, well, what idiots. They're cheering for a guy that hit 159. He hit 159, but he had 6 homers and 12 runs batted in. So his few hits were key hits. They came in the biggest moments of the game. They came when they needed him the most. Now, in the World Series, he came up absolutely small. He struck out 10 times. He batted 120. But, man, for that stretch where he got hot against the Braves and then carried the power numbers over against the Padres, it felt like every home run that he hit was a big one. Now, for his Phillies career, Rhys Hoskins, in Philadelphia, he played, for those of you who forget, he was here for 6 years, and he came up like gangbusters, man. That first year, he hit 18 home runs in 50 games with the Phillies, and he had, the record, or still believe has the record for most home runs hit to start his career. He ends up getting, 4th in the Rookie of the Year ballot in 2017. Now, he cements himself as the team's, homegrown offensive player for a couple of years there. 34 homers, 29 homers, 27 homers, 30 homers. So he had a major, power impact for this team over the course of his 6 years. He hit 242, 148 RBI with the Phillies, 148 home runs with the Phillies. So he obviously had a pretty big impact, and you saw it on display last night at Citizens Bank Park. 609-403-0973. Phyllis chimes in, says, hi, Mike. ESPN this morning on Sportsmanlike didn't think it was right for the crowd to cheer Rhys when he hit this home run. Take a listen to the call from Tom McCarthy and John Kruk.
Which I'm sure they've done that a lot.
Balls hit well out to left field. Back is Dahl, and it is gone. And Rhys Hoskins, as he did 77 times as a member of the Philadelphia Phillies, goes yard here at Citizens Bank Park. And it's a 3-1 ball game. It's got to be a weird feeling.
He is trying so hard not to laugh.
Very apropos that he's getting booed in the moment that he hits the home run. Here's a guy who got a standing ovation, is cheering, and the fans say, hey, we appreciate you, but not what you just did against us. It's just so apropos. I mean, the atmosphere in the ballpark is electric last night, but Phyllis, as you heard, it didn't sound like they were cheering for him when they hit the home. Unless they were saying Rhys, I don't know. It sounded like that they got what was going on here. Hey, we cheered for you. We gave you the standing O earlier, but you don't hit a home run against us, Rhys.
To me, it was a mixture. Like, there was a group of people who were like, oh, come on, did you have to hit a home run against us? Another part of people who were like, you know what? Good for you, Rhys Hoskins. You hit a home run. You know, so it was like a mixed reaction.
Yeah, like Mike and Marmora chimed in. He says, Gil, I loved Rhys Hoskins, loved what he did for the Phillies, we gave him a standing ovation. However, do find it odd some fans cheered him on his home run. I wasn't there, but I'd give him a standing O at the first at bat, and after all that, it's business from there on. Yeah, Mike, I don't know. That audio there, it sounded more like boos to me than cheers. I felt like the boo came through more than the cheer.
More pronounced it came through.
Yeah.
But there definitely were people who were like, you know, like if you saw the video, the guy who caught the ball, he's like pumping his fists and like pointing to, you know, Rhys Hoskins. Of course, Hoskins can't see him from the outfield, but the guy, there are people who were clapping.
Hoskins is also the DH, so not in the field, which is a smart move by the Brewers. But in the game last night, at the time of the home run, too, you know, he hits the home run. I guess it was the seventh inning. I think he hit that home run. So the Phillies are up in the game, 3-0 at the time, and then he hits that home run in the seventh. So it's not like a game tying or a home run that gives them the lead or anything. So maybe that factored in. But I heard people talking about that this morning, Phyllis. I thank you for the text as well. And the fact was, it didn't sound to me like they were getting a lot of cheers for the home run. More text messages coming in at 609-403-0973. Mike, I give mad props to the Phillies fans' passion, but let's pump the brakes on the 40,000 crowd size in June. Just 2 years ago, you were questioning the crowd size with barely 20,000. Obviously, first place, the fans will show up. I agree with what you're saying. But I will say, while I was disappointed in the crowd size 2 years ago, I am pretty surprised. See, this is where this guy, he's saying, let's pump the brakes. I think he's wrong because I did question. But after they went to that World Series, I was wondering if they would show up all season or would they just wait for the playoffs. They showed up all last season and now are showing up even more this season. So, yes, the 2 seasons ago, you are accurate that the crowd size should have been questioned because people weren't buying into the team. Now that they do, yes, you're saying obviously first place, the fans will show up. They showed up all last year too. So this isn't just, hey, this team's in first place. They showed up all year last year. And I was surprised by that. And now they're coming back again and even bigger. So I kind of push back a little bit on you saying let's pump the brakes on the 40,000 in June. How many other teams? I don't know. Maybe there's a handful of them. I imagine the regular culprits that draw. What's the attendance right now in baseball? What are the attendance leaders in baseball? I would have to imagine. Right now that the Phillies are. Would you watch that microphone 2 days in a row? That microphone's beating the crap out of you.
Phillies are second.
You think you would have done this before? You know, that microphone stands right in that same spot.
It does. Phillies are second in average attendance this year.
Behind?
The Dodgers.
Yeah, Dodgers. Okay. Yankees are in first place. They're averaging 38. Padres are a funny team. They always seem to be up there. Atlanta's 5th. St. Louis is 6th. The Cubs are 7th. So Philadelphia is 2nd. Now, last year for 2023, they were 6th. They were averaging 38. So they're averaging about the same number this year as they did last year. Now, that to go back to that guy's point, in 2022, they only averaged 28,000. So they were 10,000 off of where they are right now, and they finished 16th in the league in attendance. So part of it is once they got to that World Series, I was wondering whether they were going to show up to the ballpark last year. They proved me to be wrong, and that they did show up all year long. And now the crowds just keep getting bigger and bigger. You're getting, the Phillies are playing afternoon games with almost sellout crowds. I mean, that's unbelievable. So I see what that guy's trying to say. I just don't agree with him.
I think the guy's wrong because the bigger point is that you give the fans a reason to show up. They always will. If you give the fans a reason not to show up, they don't have a reason to show up. And I think that's how most passionate fan bases are.
Well, I think some people would say, no, most passionate fan bases show up regardless. The passionate part I would pull out of that. Most fan bases are like that. Teams good, they'll show up. Teams not good, probably won't. Passionate fan bases, you would say, would show up regardless. Like, for instance,
sure,
the attendance right now, all right? Why are the Padres? Are they a passionate fan base? Probably not. I mean, I think they're not a passionate fan base, but they're still outdrawing the Yankees.
I'd also say the Padres are the only show in town, so that probably helps them a little bit.
It does. Who else is on this list?
The St. Louis Cardinals. That's a passionate fan base, right? Historically.
They are known for, baseball heaven. Cubs are weird because it's a kind of a touristy spot. Like, they're going to sell out regardless because people go there just to see the stadium. It might not always be all Cubs fans. Toronto is not a very good team right now. They're 10th in attendance. Stuff like that. The Angels, that's another team that's kind of whatever. They're 13th in attendance. Seattle, who's in first place. Milwaukee, who's in first place. They're in the middle of the pack. So
right.
It is kind of weird. I mean, but I think the Dodgers and the Phillies being at the top, those are two teams that the Dodgers have been good for the last 10 years. Philadelphia, and by the way, they're averaging 46,000. Now, their ballpark is bigger.
The ballpark is a larger attendance, so that helps a lot.
Big time. But I to go back to that guy's point, 2 years ago, I think it was fair to be critical that the team was good. They weren't great. They were in the wild card mix, but they had been perpetually in the wild card mix.
And there's nothing wrong with questioning, hey guys, this team is winning games. Why aren't you there? Let's have a conversation about it.
Sure, absolutely. But that's not, what this guy is saying is 2 years ago, people weren't there. He's trying to say, let's pump the brakes on this being this great fan base. That's fine. If you want to say just because they're not filling the stadium every single year, that's your definition. I'm saying the team has been good the last 2 years. They're filling the place up, and not too many major league ballparks are getting 40,000 people on a June night.
He sounds like he's not a Philly sports fan.
I would think so. Reese, to me, was the face that brought us from where we were to where we are. That postseason run was one of the most special times in my life as a sports fan. I take issue with Chris Canny talking about us cheering for him. That was such a fun game, especially since he got that after Rojas JT play. That's from David in Vineland. I mean, And David in Vineland adds, Mike, you've consistently had good takes about the Phillies' attendance the last couple of years. I think so. I think I've been pretty fair on the attendance. I knocked them when they deserved to be knocked, and they have surprised me that they keep. Listen, it's hard to get people to show up to a June middle of the season baseball game.
100%.
I don't care what your record is. It's hard to say, come out and watch 82 baseball games. 40,000 people come watch 82 baseball games. That's hard. There's so many options. There's so many things to do. And quite frankly, it's not cheap to go to the ballparks.
That's the biggest thing is the money. This is not like it was 20, 30 years ago where going to a baseball game was like the ultimate inexpensive sports opportunity.
Yeah. I mean, look, if other teams in the league would have had a similar reaction, I can probably say there's very minimal amount of them for two reasons. One, I just don't think the fans in other towns they're wired differently up at that ballpark, man. It's like, again, Hoskins was a good player. He wasn't a great player, and he was the ire of people. And yet, he comes in with another team and is so appreciated for what he did. And like I said, he hit 150 in those playoffs. No, it wasn't 150, but it was close. I mean, let me pull up the actual number here for you so that I'm not getting called out. He hit in that series 159 he hit in the playoffs that year. But the fans remember the moments and the key spots that helped them win games. Yeah, he struggled in the World Series. He hit 120, he struck out 10 times, and basically was an albatross in the field. But you know what? I appreciate that you were there. And the other part of it is, number one, I don't know that other fan bases would identify a player of Rhys Hoskins' skill, which is good, not great, and then have 40,000 people at the game to be there to say, hey, Rhys, we appreciate you. Maybe there's a handful of fan bases. I don't know very many of them.
I mean, the one I would think of is the Boston Red Sox, because they still treat Dave Roberts with the stolen base like he's like a hero.
He deserves that.
So, I mean, to me, that's the one fan base that comes to my mind is the Boston Red Sox fans with,
and I would agree with that. I would say the Red Sox fan, possibly the Yankee fan. I don't know that the Yankees, are they getting 40,000 for, they're doing all right in the attendance right now, right?
Yeah, they're doing pretty good.
Yeah, they're at 38,000 on average, at home.
Fourth best in baseball.
So yeah, they're doing all right. I know there was a time when that ballpark, during the, day games, a lot of times they don't draw that well, but the Phillies they're putting 40,000 in there in day games. It's crazy. So, hey, to that guy before, in 2022, I was disappointed with the fans. In 2024, I'm pretty surprised by the fans. I got to be honest.
If I can just say about Hoskins, Mike, doesn't it feel a little with him? It's almost like when you go to a class reunion. It's like when you're in school, you're like, can't wait to be done with this place. Then you go back like, oh, remember all the good times we had together? I feel like that's how the Hoskins vibe was last night.
Possible. Yeah. Maybe that's the nostalgia of people remembering some of the big moments. Eagles OTAs. Guess who showed up? But guess where he was playing? Got the information on that. John McMullen tonight at 5 o'clock. Adam Kaplan, football at 4. We'll talk Phils with Frank Close. We got the Phillies mailbag coming up at 3 o'clock today. Somebody showed up to OTAs, but somebody was playing a different position today. I got the details coming up next on the Sports Bash live on 97.3 ESPN, the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app, and streaming live on the X platform at 973 ESPN. Use the hashtag SBLive.
This is the story of the one. As a maintenance engineer, he hears things differently. To the untrained ear, everything on his shop floor might sound fine, but he can hear gears grinding or a belt slipping. So he steps in to fix the problem at hand before it gets out of hand. And he knows Grainger's got the right product he needs to get the job done, which is music to his ears. Call, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
The Sports Bash with Mike Gill on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app.
2:28 Sports Bash live, 97.3 ESPN, the free mobile app, streaming live on the X platform at 973 ESPN. Use the hashtag SBLive. James from Philadelphia. What's up, James? Chimes in. He says, what do you make of James Bradberry playing safety? Yeah, I was going to get into that, James. I'm glad you brought it up on the text board. So James Bradberry showed up today. That was question number one. Was James Bradberry going to show up to camp today? OTAs, mini camps, the mandatory sessions today. So he did show up. So I guess that's, I don't want to say a surprise, but it's certainly one of the stories that we were keeping an eye on. Was James Bradberry going to show up to the Eagles mandatories today? Then we had a lot of other questions. Did they want him to show up? And if he did show up, where would he be on the depth chart? I guess what we didn't account for was he showed up and they moved him. They moved him to a new position. Listen, I don't know what you do with that. James Bradberry's here, and he's working with the safeties. That's what Nick Sirianni said, that he was going to be working with the safeties today. Can they make James Bradberry a safety? I don't know. Do you guys think that James Bradberry can play safety? I mean, I would be surprised if they think he's a better safety than he is. Listen, you might not like James Bradberry. You might think he's done. But he was, I should say, a good zone corner, which is what Vic Fangio was going to ask him to do. So when they put their corners out there today, 7-on-7, Darius Slay, Kaylee Ringo, and Avonte Maddox is in the slot. That's your guys right now. So is Ringo better than Bradbury? Listen, I don't have an opinion on it at this point until we get to training camp and we start seeing some things happening. But have the Eagles already written off, I should say, the possibility of James Bradbury helping this team? Another interesting development today at Eagles training camp. How about Mekhi Becton not playing right guard, but playing left guard today? Why is that interesting? Well, obviously the left guard is Landon Dickerson. I don't think they're thinking about moving Landon Dickerson, are they? I would imagine no, but why Mekhi Becton? If you're going to play guard, why would you slot him at left guard and not right guard? I find that to be kind of interesting. You got a new role, obviously, for Juergens. No Tyler Steen there today, from what I understand. And you've got a couple of other nuggets here. So, no, Landon Dickerson wasn't there today, so I'm not suggesting that, hey, Becton's going to play left and they're going to move Dickerson to right. It's just, even though Dickerson wasn't there, the right guard spot is the one up for grabs. If you're going to get Mekhi Becton into the mix, why not put him right into the mix and see if you can compete at right guard instead of putting him at a spot that he has no chance to win? That's all. James Bradbury at practice today, and he's there, but he's going to work with the safeties. I don't know what to think about that. I don't know. Listen, if they think that they can get something out of him playing safety, great. Have at it. But do you really think that James Bradbury is going to be a better safety than he would be a zone corner in this Vic Fangio scheme? I don't know. I don't know what to think about that.
Mike, do you take any value out of the fact that he showed up and he was willing to take those reps?
That's a good question. 2 points for you. Was he willing? Or did he just
he could have left. He could have not shown up today.
Well, he'd get fined.
He'd get fined, but he's got money.
Well, I don't know about you. I don't want to just needlessly spend money. You want to ask me to go play safety even when I don't feel like it? I'll save the 35, whatever it costs, just to go play safety for the afternoon. It's a very fair question. I'm not belittling the question in any means. I'm just saying, I don't know. Does he have a choice? Does he say, is he miserable? Is he going to be so miserable that they say, well, you're miserable, we can't keep you?
Well, I mean, maybe you at least put him out there at safety, and then maybe you trade him in August.
Well, that's another question. So you just walked me into another question that was going through my mind. Is he as valuable to other teams if he's playing a position he's never played before? Wouldn't you say, hey, he's playing corner and he's a good corner and we like him, he's at the top of our depth chart?
Or do you make
Does that make him more or less tradable?
Or
that he's a safety?
Do you make him more valuable because he could do more than one thing?
Yeah, I mean, that's one of those things where can he really do more things, or are you just trying to put him there because you don't want him? Like, I don't know at this stage of his career. Now, you might say this is the stage of the career where corners move to safety. Is James Bradbury a good tackler? Not necessarily.
But was Charles Woodson? Was Ed Reed? Like, were those guys great tacklers?
I think Ed Reed was one of the... Well, Ed Reed was a safety. I mean, he wasn't a corner.
Well, he was a safety, right. But
right.
The point is that you could play safety, not be a great tackler, is my point.
Those guys are more physical, though. But, I mean, I would think Ed Reed, I would put him in the category. Yeah, he was a big hitter. I mean, he was a playmaking guy. Is James Bradbury some big hit? Like, is he a guy that's going to be a ball hawk all over the place? Ed Reed's one of the greatest safeties of all time, by the way. You're trying to compare James Bradbury to...
I'm comparing him to, like, the idea that, you know...
Woodson's one because he played corner and moved.
Wait, well, like Charles Woodson. Rod Woodson actually could tackle. But Charles Woodson was not like some elite tackler in space.
No, but he was what Woodson was a playmaker. He was a guy who was a ball hawk. He was a guy who would play the ball, make plays. James Bradbury, I mean, he's a zone corner. I mean, he's more of a guy. Now, he's had some years where he's been, around the ball, but to me, a guy who's going to move from corner to safety is more because, first off, another problem with Bradbury, like, his size doesn't say safety.
He's
more of a longer, he's not the shorter, compact guy like Woodson and those guys.
Well, even Malcolm Jenkins was a more strong-built guy than Bradbury.
Yeah, Bradbury doesn't scream safety at me. I'm sorry. Like, I don't look at him and say, he looks like a guy that can make the transition to safety.
But is it maybe something where maybe it's not literal safety? Maybe it's like people have talked about how Fangio sometimes run that setup where he has quote-unquote 3 safeties out there.
And I thought about that, but here's what my retort to that would be. Didn't you just draft Cooper DeJean that you think is that guy?
That's what I think. That's what you think. But is maybe he behind the curve in his learning at this level?
They haven't really been out all that much yet, but...
You mentioned the first team was out there. It was Slay, Maddox, and Ringo.
Slay, Maddox, Ringo. Yes, they were the 3 starters today.
So that might not be
that according to Matt Gelb anyway.
Right. But the point is that it doesn't mean that they're not working the other guys.
By the way, they just finished practice. According to E.J. Smith, they just finished up. So it was a little over an hour today.
So my question I'm asking, Mike, is do you think that maybe they're just still working those guys in?
Well, like I'm trying to get as much information here. Now, Martin Frank just tweeted out Quinyon Mitchell was getting first-team reps nickel in the slot. Then he went to the outside with the second team, and Cooper DeJean went to the nickel with the second team. So I think they were rotating guys around, yes.
Right.
I don't think because Kaylee Ringo was the first guy today that he's the starting outside guy. I think what the surprising thing is, they didn't even say, Bradbury, go compete. You're getting moved. Hey, I didn't even get a shot to come in. Like, you didn't give me one opportunity to say, now, I don't know. I mean, when John comes on tonight at 5, we could talk more about this. I think he was there today. Did they have a conversation beforehand? Did Bradbury know this? Was he sideswiped? Now, he might speak after practice. They just finished up. I don't know. Is Bradbury surprised by this? Did Bradbury go to them and say, hey, guys, I'll go play safety if you need me to? Or is he saying, well, why the hell didn't you put me at corner? Like, there's a lot of peels of the onion on this one to me. There was a lot of peels of the onion before today. Did the Eagles want him to show up? Was he going to show up?
Right.
Was he going to be, if he did show up, was he going to be at the top of the depth chart? Like, does he get to keep his job until they say, you were the starter and you just got beat out?
And if he talks to the media, what is his reason for not being at OTAs? Was he shopping for sconces?
That was, I think McMullen had told me, I was on his show last week. He said he had a charity event that was already scheduled.
Charity event for 3 weeks? However many weeks.
They only had.
There was at least 2 weeks of OTAs.
Yeah, but there was like 2. Yeah, whatever it was. But they were voluntary, by the way. So he did not have to be at those.
But it would have been productive if he was here for some of those days. Even Slay and the other veterans showed up for most of those workouts.
Yeah, I mean, listen, to me, look, being there is better than not being there 100 times out of 100. You're never going to say, hey, not being there is great. I mean, could he have been there? Sure. But again, this goes back to, did they want him there? Did they not want him there? He showed up and we didn't expect him to show up. We don't want you to play corner. We're going to move you to, I mean, to me, this is, you could go on for 4 hours coming up with all the different scenarios of why. Why is he playing safety? Like, to me, okay, this is my opinion. He is a highly paid player who was very good 2 years ago. You got a new coordinator who matches closer to what you had 2 years ago. I want to at least say, does this guy have anything left in the tank? Because I just don't see him helping you as a safety. I mean, to me, if he plays safety and he excels or succeeds, call me shocked. I mean, June 4th, call me pretty surprised that he's out there running around playing safety on this team. I'd be pretty surprised. Now, if they obviously see him a lot more in the field than I do, closer than I do, nothing screams to me James Bradbury is going to be a safety on this team. But I do see a scenario where James Bradbury says, hey, listen, I just didn't connect with the guy last year. I don't think they used me right. I got something left in the tank. Give me a shot to win that position. I'm the best corner out here. Okay, I can be convinced of that more than the safety spot.
Yeah, it's definitely perplexing to an extent that you have to wonder, how much of this was them telling him to go to safety? How much of this was him agreeing to go to safety? How much of this is Fangio saying, just give me a day to see you at safety and then we'll put you back at corner? Like, there's so many variables that go into this.
Yeah, I don't know that it's, hey, go out there one day, let me see what you got.
Well, for example,
James Bradbury is a veteran player. You're not just booting you to the safety. You're trying out today. This has been a guy who's an all-pro, by the way. It's not John Ross.
Right, I know that. But, for example, you drafted Quinyon Mitchell as the first-round pick. The guy never played slot corner in college. But today at practice, he got reps at slot corner. So is there a little bit of them just saying, hey, what happens if I put these guys in different positions going on, maybe?
Maybe. I mean, that's just, to me, that's a mindset that I wouldn't have. If I have no intention of now, they might have intention of seeing Quinyon Mitchell there. So yes, he's different. To me, the Bradbury thing is I don't have any intention of using you at safety. I don't know, but maybe they legitimately do think he could play safety. I don't see it. I hope I'm wrong. Maybe I am. Hi, Mike. I'll be at the park tonight. Who should I throw $5 to hit on a homer? I didn't get the lineup yet, Jeff, but I'll give you a guy. I can play along on that one. Terry in Galloway says, come on, Josh, get your head out of your heading. Ed Reed is the greatest safety of all time. Did you really ask if he was a good tackler? Wow. Terry, I gave you the same answer, Terry. You can't put Ed Reed in that discussion. That's a bad job by you. I'm taking the 2 points I gave you away.
That's fine. I didn't know this was, what is that show at 5 o'clock on television?
Yeah.
That show with Tony Reali. I didn't know we were doing that show, but okay, fine.
Yeah, you always get 2 points for something good, and then if you say something like that, you get the 2 points taken away.
Yeah. Well, what is that saying? The Lord giveth, Lord taketh away?
That's right, yeah. You certainly mentioning Ed Reed as just some stiff safety in the James Bradbury pantheon. Hey, you know who's comparable to James Bradbury? If you told me James Bradbury was Ed Reed, I'd say, okay, I can see him going to safety.
Yes, it was a bad name poll.
Yes.
I will give you that.
Yes, it was. I'm going to have to agree with you on that one. Now, there are guys who do make that move later on in their careers, and Bradbury would qualify as later on in his career. Can he make this move? I just don't. To me, his play style, body type, that doesn't always translate, but none of it kind of plays out here.
The body type is more than fair because we've mentioned Charles Woodson and Malcolm Jenkins. Both of those guys were, well, frankly, more built up than Bradbury is physically.
Yeah, Bradbury is 6'1", 210. So he's kind of like a longer, leaner guy. The safety. Now, by the way, I saw this last night over at Pro Football Focus, ranked the top 32. They're doing all their positional rankings, and they did the top 32 safeties. Do you think that one of the Eagles safeties, Chauncey Gardner-Johnson or Reed Blankenship, landed on that list?
Definitely CJ.
Okay.
I would put him on the list.
Top 32.
I think CJ has to be on that list.
Okay.
I think he should, at worst, he's top 15.
Now, Blankenship, by the way, is 6'1", 203. Sidney Brown's 5'10", 211. Chauncey Gardner-Johnson's 5'11", 210.
Yeah, Sidney Brown's a little shorter and thicker. So,
yeah, Sidney Brown is more of the kind of more compact type of guy.
Right.
Yeah. Plus, Bradbury in his career. Now, one of the reasons you move to safety is you're not as fast as the corners.
Right.
Bradbury has never been known for his speed.
Right.
He has not been a fast corner. He's 6'1", 210. Now, a guy like Cooper DeJean, he's 6 foot 198, which, a lot of people are wondering whether he could go play safety. He's even smaller than Bradbury is. But
I was going to say, I pulled up Malcolm Jenkins. Depending on which site you go to, he's either 5'11" or 6 foot. And he's 205. So he was a little more compact than some of these other guys are.
609-403-0973. 609-403-0973. Cole and LBI goes back to the baseball question, says, guys, you can't deny the passion of the Philly fans. New York, Philly, Boston, they're the only fan bases that can brag about the passion they show towards their teams. Yeah, these Northeast fan bases, you can put all those together. Like the Northeast, Boston, New York. You're right about that. Buffalo,
yes.
I think Buffalo for football is kind of in that Northeast kind of. They're taking the shirts off in below zero weather.
Jumping through tables.
All of that, yeah.
By the way, you met Malcolm Jenkins a couple years ago at the Super Bowl.
I did.
Is he 5'11" or 6 foot?
I don't know. I wasn't scanning him.
Well, I think you might have got a good eye look at him.
He was sitting down.
Well, it's like if you go to an NBA game and you saw Allen Iverson, you knew he wasn't 6 foot.
Yeah. Malcolm sat down with us, and it wasn't like, hey, standing there and measuring him up.
Bad job by you.
Mm-hmm. 2 points away from me. Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN, the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app. Streaming live video on the X platform at 973 ESPN. Use the hashtag SB Live. Are you fed up with those noisy neighbors or tired of endless property maintenance? Progressive Fence and Rail has robust fence and low maintenance railings for privacy and ease. Their stylish decks, cozy gazebos, and sleek sheds will transform your backyard into the perfect outdoor gathering spot. Right now, get 20% off all materials and an extended 4-year warranty plus flexible finance options. Get your free estimate today. Call my friends at Progressive Fence and Rail.com. Coming up, Frank Close has the Phillies mailbag in 13 minutes. Adam Kaplan has football at 4. Knicks Nuggets in the 4 o'clock hour. And Johnny Mack is back at 5. Recapping Eagles OTAs here on the Sports Bash.
It's this.
This is the story of the one. As head of maintenance at a concert hall, he knows the show must always go on. That's why he works behind the scenes, ensuring every light is working, the HVAC is humming, and his facility shines. With Grainger's supplies and solutions for every challenge he faces, plus 24/7 customer support, his venue never misses a beat. Call quickgrainger.com or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
With Mike Gill.
Do I have everybody's attention now?
On 97.3 ESPN and the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app.
2:53. So Eagles OTAs today. James Bradbury at safety. Kind of one of the bigger storylines there. We'll talk more about it with Adam Kaplan tonight at 4 for football at 4. Johnny Mack at 5 o'clock tonight will join us to give us some thoughts on Bradbury and then the other things that are happening at Eagles camp today, which you had Mekhi Becton out there playing guard. That's new. You had a lot of the new guys out there. Quinyon Mitchell playing some slot. No Phillies lineup yet. By the way, happy birthday, Aaron Nola today. How about Aaron Nola? 9 years. I remember the day Aaron Nola got drafted. We had him on the air that day. You weren't. What year was that? Were you here yet?
I think that was before me.
Yeah. Pete G chased him down and somehow got him on the air that day. And he was as nervous as can be. And here we are all these years later, and he has seemingly not grown any more confident in this. You know, he is just a quiet guy, Aaron Nola. But I guess he's got to be 30, 31 years old now. So happy birthday, Aaron Nola.
31, Aaron.
Yeah, he was drafted LSU, first round. That was, I guess he was 22 years old because he got to the majors pretty quickly.
2014 MLB draft.
10 years ago. There you go. This is his 9th big league season. He got drafted, went to the minors, and then I think he came up middle of his next season there. And he has been a fixture for the Phils. By the way, when we come back, 3 names being floated about that the Phillies could have interest in at the trade deadline. Find out. Coming up next, we talk to Frank Close. The Phillies mailbag is on the way here on the Sports Bash.
This is the Sports Bash with Mike Gill on 97.3 ESPN and the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app. Now live from inside the Ocean Casino Resort Studio, here's Mike Gill.
3 o'clock, Sports Bash, 97.3 ESPN. I'm Mike Gill. Frank Close covers the Phillies for 97.3 ESPN.com. He's the host of the Powder Blue podcast. And, of course, every Tuesday he answers your questions in the mailbag, brought to you by Broadley's Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning, your trusted source for heating, plumbing, service, and installation for generations. 609-390-3907. Online, Broadleys.net. A lot going on with the Phils. Great night at the ballpark last night. They win 3-1. Rhys Hoskins returns. He hits a homer. Gets thrown, steals a base. Gets thrown out at the plate. But all of that, it was just a fun game, a fun atmosphere, Frank, and another well-pitched game for Zach Wheeler. David Dahl goes yard last night, so it was a fun night at the ballpark.
Yeah, and only one little blip on that Wheeler stat line at the end of the night, and of course, the Rhys Hoskins home run, right? The ex-Philly killer, ex-Philly killer, right? Is usually the way that it goes. You know, everybody, it always seems when they come back to Philadelphia, they got to do something. So, but no, by the way, I just could not believe, and I know you were interacting with me on Twitter a little bit, but all the national people suggesting that the Phillies fans would boo Rhys Hoskins, man, that was, I don't know where that came from. And, you know, I saw the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel with the old, they booed Santa Claus tropes and stuff like that. So, but no, I think you saw last night what the Philadelphia fan is. They're very appreciative of their longtime players. And and by the way, the resale market tickets were going for good money last night. People were really happy to see Rhys Hoskins, and I think they were also much happier even over a Phillies win.
Yeah, and obviously, he gets the great ovation. He hits the home run. I couldn't tell. Like, it kind of seemed mixed on the home run. Like, it seemed like there was some boos, cheers. But, hey, listen, you got the standing O. Welcome back, but you can't hit a home run against us.
Honestly, Mike, I think some people that were booing the home run were laughing as they booed, and then by the time he got to home plate, they gave him a nice, clap. Polite, like a politer golf clap than a standing ovation, but I think that a lot of those boos were in jest when Hoskins hit that home run.
Yeah, and obviously he comes back and, he hits the home run, so it's fun because the Phillies win the game. So you kind of got everything in the game last night. You got a David Dahl home run. So, Frank, let's talk a little bit about how you see the, left field, outfield situation. There has been some reporting now. Jim Bowden says, look, they're calling for outfielders. Jeff Passan mentioned 3 outfielders' names. We'll get to that in just a minute here. But how do you see this outfield situation going with now Brandon Marsh out?
Well, the Phillies did call David Dahl up, and to do so, they had to add a roster spot. I got to check. I don't believe he has any minor league options available. So if he's going to be up, I think the Phillies need to give him a good look, especially against right-handed pitching, because the moment that they go to cut him off the roster, then they risk losing him altogether. So I think the Phillies have always taken an approach where they really want to keep as many people as they can and really only eliminate people from the roster when they absolutely have to. So what I think you're going to see is against right-handed pitching, which is more of the time than not, you'll see David Dahl starting in left field where Brandon Marsh would have. And then maybe against a lefty, maybe that's when you see the Rojas Pache outfield combination in left and center there. But I think they're going to give him some opportunities to show that he needs to belong. And so that will happen over time.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, Dahl, you can give some more background on this. He was an all-star. Here's a guy who was a first-round pick in the draft, so he did have some credentials, was an all-star. Kind of how did we get here, I guess, with Dahl, where he doesn't make the roster? He's been bouncing around a little bit.
Yeah, the thing about David Dahl, he was, let me ask you this, though, Mike. How many times have there been players, I think of Aaron Altair, comes up, has a really nice season, the league makes adjustments, and then he never really amounts to much. Then, of course, then you have the likes of Dominic Brown, who has that little stretch, becomes an all-star, never really comes back again in the major leagues. So, it really does require not just to get up into the major leagues and have a good year, but you need to learn how to adjust to the league after they adjust to you. And, maybe someone like David Dahl, maybe he does have something left in the tank. Maybe the older, more mature player has figured out some of that, and he can stay competitive. I think the odds tend to be against somebody like him. But the David Dahls of the world, I think they're the type that you always add a few of them at spring training. And sometimes they work out. Sometimes they don't work out. More often they don't work out, quite honestly. But you want to have some people at AAA where if you have two guys hit the injured list at the same time, like happened to the Phillies yesterday, you can call one of them up and see what they've got. So I think David Dahl is in that category. And, every once in a while, somebody comes back and surprises you. Thinking back over the years, a lot of players have had sort of second life. Pitchers sometimes figure out how to pitch after being throwers, and hitters sometimes really learn the craft of hitting. So we'll see what happens there. Joey Meneses who's with the Nationals now, was in the Phillies AAA lineup every day a few years ago and never made up to the big leagues with the Phillies. He found second life in the major leagues. So, hey, this guy could too.
By the way, the Phillies lineup is out, and it's brought to you by Clark's Moving and Storage, Rio Grande. Moving's a breeze with Clark's Moving and Storage. Frank and I will get your live reactions. Schwarber, Real Muto, Harper, Bohm, Stott, Castellanos, Dahl, Sosa, Rojas. So same lineup as last night. They're going right back with Dahl, I guess. Now, I thought last night was interesting because the Brewers originally had a right-handed pitcher. They switched to a lefty, but the Phillies, I guess, kept Dahl in the lineup there, and he's back in the lineup tonight after the night he had 2 hits and the home run last night. But it doesn't seem like I guess some people thought Merrifield might get that opportunity to kind of be more of the everyday left fielder, and it doesn't seem like that's going to be the case, at least not initially.
Well, tonight's quote-unquote starter for the Brewers is a lefty, but, Koenig is not really a starter. He's made 3 starts all year. I think he's coming in as an opener. That seems to be what the Brewers are doing these days. So I think you're going to see most of the game. The problem with these opposing teams and their openers, you kind of lose track of who's in the rotation and pitching on what day,
right?
Because they're never listed. But I think you're going to see a majority of right-handed pitching for today's game. I'm sure, it's not like spring training where they give you the list of pitchers you're going to see over the course of the day.
Right.
But I would expect Koenig to really be in there just to get the first couple lefties out to try to face Bryce Harper in the first inning. And then he'll be switched out for a right-hander. So I think that's why Dahl is there. I think that he will get these looks. And let's face it, if the alternate is, you're going to have somebody like Christian Pache in left and Rojas in center if you don't have Dahl in the lineup. So I think right now he's going to get these opportunities, and they're going to see if he can stick. I mean, down at AAA, he was really hitting. He was hitting 340, dozen home runs, OPS through the roof. So, he kind of, like a lot of players, they go to AAA and then you forget all about them almost, and then they hit there, but it's AAA. He really was banging on the door saying to the Phillies, give me a shot. So I think they're going to give him a shot. Now that they have, again, not 1, but 2 of their players on the injured list.
Let's get a question on the same topic here from Greg. He says, because of the injury, will they try to speed up the process and maybe add someone, or are they going to take their time with this? I don't know what you think about Marsh's, how long he might be out for, but any players, do they try to speed up the process because Marsh is out, or they just feel okay with what they got?
Well, the only word we have so far, Rob Thompson said both Clemens and Marsh, the word he used was mild. So provided that it's mild, then maybe it won't be that long a stay on the IL. But look, I think the Phillies need to do 2 things. They want to see what Dahl has. Since this is their shot to bring him up, again, they're going to have to cut him if they don't want to keep him around. So this is their shot to check out what Dahl can do. And this is also another opportunity, too, for Whit Merrifield, who we keep talking about. Merrifield probably can play more with both of those players off the roster, even if Dahl is getting a lot of looks in left field. We kind of saw the Phillies going with a Clemens and Merrifield platoon, depending on who was on the mound each day. So I think Merrifield is going to get some extra opportunities here now, especially with you're seeing Turner still a few weeks out from maybe being better. He had that little minor setback. So I think for right now, you want to see if Merrifield is really flamed out in his career, or if he's got something left in the tank. I think that's a really important question to answer before you get to the trade deadline. And I think it's also really important to see what David Dahl does. Now, beyond that, a lot of teams aren't opened up for business yet in terms of making trades. A lot of teams are still in this. I mean, if you look at the standings, you got a lot of teams hovering around the 500 mark that are expected to be contenders, and the teams that are hovering around 500. I mean, look at St. Louis, who the Phillies just played. They're 2 games under the 500 mark. that's a team that usually doesn't give up when they're 2 games under the 500 mark, right? So you kind of expect them to go on a run, right? So Chicago, 2 games under the 500 mark. You expect them to be around. San Diego, 1 game over. And even San Fran and Arizona, both of them are 3 and 4 games under the 500 mark. You expect them to do better too. So none of those teams are going to be opening up for business in terms of making trades. So in terms of what's available out there, in terms of who's able to contribute something in your own house, I think that's going to take a while to play out. So I don't think there's any added sense of urgency. I think they could look in the outfield later, again, depending on too and how the likes of Rojas do, for at the plate, and whether or not they feel like that they want to go to the playoffs with Rojas in there all the time. I think that's a question remaining to be answered. So it doesn't surprise me that they're keeping an open eye for outfielders, but I don't think that sense of urgency has been in any way ramped up lately.
Now, Jeff Passett over at ESPN.com listed the Phillies as one of 6 teams that would be definite adders. The Braves, the Orioles, the Dodgers, the Yankees, the Mariners, and the Phillies as teams that will definitely be adding. He mentioned, that outfield would be the spot. He mentioned 3 guys, Randy Arozarena, Kyle Tucker, and Luis Robert as the guys that they would be possibly, that could be moving. White Sox, Tampa. Arozarena's been dreadful, but I love him. I'm a big Arozarena fan, but I don't know if he's got anything left to say. Kyle Tucker would be very interesting. Another left-handed bat. Those 3 guys there, anything from you?
I don't think Arozarena is a fit on this roster, just like Rhys Hoskins wasn't a fit on this roster anymore. I don't think he's got a position he can play, and I really don't think you want to put Kyle Schwarber back into the outfield. So I didn't think that was a good match for the Phillies. Kyle Tucker, what a great prospect he was, and an untouchable. As the Phillies and other teams made deals with Astros over the years, he is a very, very nice player. And as you said, that would be a nice lefty bat that you could put in the outfield and feel good about the defense. That's kind of a starter level player that you're adding here. And then Luis Robert, I don't really know his story. He seemed to have been underwhelming the last few years, but the White Sox, of course, are going to be open for business. The White Sox really, really floundering there in the AL Central, and I think they would like to get a return on some of these assets. And by the way, batting 214 in the major leagues, now currently in the minor leagues. I don't know if that's kind of a project player. And I don't know if the Phillies are looking for a project as they try to go to the World Series. So if this was the off season and they think back a couple of years when they had no center fielders, it seemed like, and they had to do something, maybe you would take a flyer on someone like him. But I don't know that the Phillies are in line to have some sort of reclamation project while they're trying to go to the World Series.
All right, a couple questions. Michael wants to know, why not leave Stott at short, put Turner at second when he returns? Turner played second with the Dodgers. He's also played center field. That's been floated out there as well about moving him back to the outfield and keeping Sosa at shortstop. But do you see a change in position for Trey Turner when he returns?
I do not see any move happening the moment that he returns. I think if you look back at his history, he did play second base in Los Angeles when Corey Seager was the shortstop. When the Nationals sort of surprised everybody and traded he and Scherzer over to the Dodgers at the 2021 trade deadline. But Turner did take over shortstop at the Dodgers in 2022, and when he did so, he basically said he felt like he was playing left-handed when he was playing second base. He felt so much better at shortstop. And so I think that represents a really big move for somebody like Turner, someone the Phillies gave an 11-year deal to and basically committed the shortstop position to him for a long time. Now, does that mean he will stay there forever and ever? I don't necessarily want to commit to that. I think there's a possibility he could change positions at some point, but I think right now, if you're talking about this year, even though we had some defensive miscues before he went down with the injury, I think that's the type of reimagining of the roster that you do in an off season. Bryson Stott, very, very good at second base. When I think back to when the Phillies drafted him, a lot of people felt that he would land at second base permanently whenever he settled into the major leagues, and that's kind of what he did. I mean, I think you could say, well, Edmundo Sosa is playing really great, so he's playing shortstop. Well, let's also remember Edmundo Sosa could play second base too if they were going to do that. So I don't think you're going to see any type of change like that in the interim. But will the Phillies at some point, some offseason, decide to reimagine their defensive alignment? I think it's possible, but I think a lot of that depends on who's coming and who's going. Nick Castellanos becomes a free agent after next year. That's like really the last position of the starting players that you're going to see sort of first one to go. And then, at that point, you start thinking of him as an outfielder again. And, as you said, he played 73 games in center field when he first came up with the Nationals. I don't know that they would think of that right now. I think right now they'll probably leave him where he's comfortable, where he's signed to play. And any major tinkering like that might happen in the offseason. But yeah, I think that's also kudos to Bryson Stott, who played pretty well at the position. I mean, he did replace Didi Gregorius and kind of shored up the job as the Phillies went to the World Series in 22. And he's been pretty good when they've thrown him over there the few times that they have this year. So I think that he might be capable at shortstop still, but I think the long-term plan was always maybe second base. And I think that reimagining is too big to try to do in any season.
All right, Frank Close, 97.3 ESPN.com covers the Phillies. His mailbag, a couple more questions there. You take a look at this team, as many people have said, outfield seems to be the spot that they're looking at. Edmundo Sosa is a guy that Rob Thompson mentioned as a potential outfielder. Is that something that you could – I know they tried him out there a little bit last year. It didn't really stick. But is Sosa a guy who's a candidate to play the outfield?
Hey, you know what? He's maybe a natural infielder, but they kind of got him with the idea that he could be a utility player, and utility players sometimes play the outfield when you need to. He's certainly got good range to his left and his right. I mean, I think he's he doesn't have a whole lot of experience playing some of those hit hard fly balls to the outfield and line drives to the outfield, but I wouldn't hesitate to give him a shot. I mean, if you remember, even the 2008 Phillies, they had Eric Bruntlett as the defensive replacement in left field for Pat Burrell at the end of games. So I think he's athletic enough that he definitely could. And, a guy like that, when you're at full strength, you want to try to find a way to get at bats for players like that. And if Sosa is deserving of at bats, if he continues to play this well, then yeah, that seems to be, as you said, outfield seems to be where there's openings. Well, he might get the first crack at it.
All right, let's get another question in. Kobe Allard, how is he still on the 40-man? You take a look at, you were talking about having to make some 40-man possible roster decisions here. Do they have some that they can make if they need to?
Yeah, I think what you just said there is the need to. Now, Kobe Allard, he and Spencer Turnbull, they signed both of them kind of with the idea that they had minor league options. You could put him at AAA in case you need a starter, and as you saw, Spencer Turnbull stuck with the Phillies, and he's been pretty good. 3-0, 2.64 ERA, 6 starts, 7 bullpen appearances. He's been a really nice player in the major leagues. Now, Kobe Allard, he went down to AAA, and he has not been that great. His ERA is almost 10, 0-5 record, and essentially he kind of lost his rotation spot at AAA Lehigh Valley. So why is he still on the roster? Well, you don't really remove players unless you absolutely need a spot. Now, the Phillies did indeed make a couple of transactions this week, and certainly we know that the move to bring up David Dahl required that they open a spot on the 40-man roster, and Michael Rucker, who you may not even remember at all because he only made 2 spring training appearances, he got moved to the 60-day IL. That created a spot. Dylan Covey, he just moved to the 60-day IL because they just claimed a pitcher from the Athletics named Freddie Tarnok, who's going to be who was optioned down to AAA. So the Phillies have had moves that they can make before they cut somebody, but I think with a lot of players, you're going to see that eventually they're going to get to the point where they're up for a roster crunch. And let's be honest, this is a game of performance, and the lowest performers are going to be the ones who get cut. And by the way, I think
unless you're Taijuan Walker, right?
Well, honestly, you know what? Since you brought him up, Mike, I'm not that worried about Walker there. When you consider what he's given them in terms of innings, and yeah, he's given up some runs, but you got to remember he's a 5th starter in the major leagues. He is not the team's ace. He is not the number 2, not the number 3, and not even the number 4 at this point. So I can live with one starting pitcher like that on the roster, knowing that he's going to at least give the innings. And let's be honest too, like I've said this before, Spencer Turnbull, they're worried about his innings since he's pitched more than 56 just once in his career. I think that if you get towards the end of the season down the stretch and one could perform better than the other, then you might see some moves there. But honestly,
I said the same thing yesterday, Frank, is look, they just want him to eat up 5-6 innings a week in June and July. He's not going to pitch in the playoffs. Right. And you saw that last year. He was not really an option in the playoffs. When you get to the playoffs, you play with the front half of your roster. With the days off in between, you don't need to rest people like you would during the season. So I am okay with my fifth starter going deep into games as he's able to and not killing the bullpen. And have they won some of his starts? Absolutely. So it's not like it's a guaranteed loss every day. And quite honestly, the Phillies very well could have won the other day when he started. I think they were just 3 for 17 with runners in scoring position. Yeah. That was a very winnable game that the Phillies did not win. Yeah, I agree. I mean, listen, if you told me to replace him and I gave me the option, sure. But I do also agree that the Turnbull thing, the innings there, and other than Spencer Turnbull, they don't really have a lot of other guys. So it's, hey, we're paying this guy $18 million. We're going to throw him in. And that factors into sometimes why I think he stays into games longer than possibly he would, because it's like, hey, we need this guy to get us 5 innings to try to save the bubble. So there are games where probably you're saying, why isn't Thompson getting him out of here? And it's like, you know what? You're going to pitch 5 innings, dude. You're getting paid $18 million. So I think that factors in too. But I think the question might be, I think there's a balance here of how do you keep Turnbull sharp in the role that he's in when you want to bring him back and take over that spot when Walker gets kind of demoted. I don't know how that's a fine line. Yeah, and my other worry would be, if I'm the Phillies, you saw Ranger Suarez, right? He got hit on the hand with a line drive, right? That is not something you can anticipate, right? And so you got 3 innings out of Spencer Turnbull that day. You got him a victory by coming in and pitching those 3 games. If he's in your rotation, you just get rid of Taijuan Walker, well, then what do you have? So, you need to keep that depth in and around the roster for when you need it. And, let's face it too. I mean, Suarez, it sounds like they dodged a lot of trouble, but if tomorrow all of a sudden his hand is swollen and they say, you know what, maybe he shouldn't start this weekend in London. Yeah. And then all of a sudden you're kind of screwed. So I think it's good to keep as many players around as possible. Now, the question was about Colby Allard. I mean, he might not be someone who's pitched himself into the equation, but, Michael Mercado pitching very well at AAA. They do have a little bit of other depth, but not a ton of other depth. Mm-hmm. And so when you don't have a whole lot of depth, you want to really keep as much around as you possibly can. And then when it's time to go for the kill in the playoffs, you put your best half forward. And quite honestly, right now for Phillies, well ahead in first place, the National League East, they don't really need to shake it up. It's not like they're a 500 team just trying to stay alive and trying to see what they can do to get above water. Some teams are doing that right now. They might be more willing to move a Walker aside, but the Phillies are winning overall, so there's really not that sense of urgency. Yeah, I think why they have this, pad of the standings right now, if they can keep getting 5 innings out of him. Now, somebody just texted in $70 million for the 5th starter. Yeah, no, this is a regrettable signing. There's no question about it. If they could undo this deal, they would undo the deal. But this is what they have. And they have him for 2 more years, by the way. Awful deal. Awful signing all around. But if I'm going to pay the guy $18 million, you're going to get me 5 innings, whether you're walking guys, getting shelled or not, it seems to be the case here. And one of the things that people don't tend to think of, when the Phillies signed Walker, they were facing losing Wheeler and losing Nola to free agency. Now, what if you had lost both? You needed somebody to take the ball and go into the mound. Now, luckily for the Phillies, they were able to come to terms with both Wheeler and Nola. And, you have Ranger Suarez around for a couple more years. So the rotation actually kind of worked out for the Phillies. Now, they ended up with one of the guys they expected to have the ball every 5th day by now, having Tommy John surgery, right? Andrew Painter, right? And Sanchez came out of nowhere. Yeah, and Sanchez, I was a little nervous for the Phillies, thinking that, okay, you're going to give this guy the ball every 5th day. He was kind of a nice player, but I didn't know he was ready to take that step, and he has. So you were at the point a couple years ago where you really felt like the Phillies were really walking a tightrope and needing to have arms and just anybody to pitch the ball. Luckily for them, they were able to keep their top 2 pitchers, and Ranger Suarez is still around. So having that good rotation
you don't need to worry so much about whoever takes the ball fifth.
Frank Close answers your Phillies mailbag questions every Tuesday here on the Sports Bash. You can hit him up on X at Frank Close. And, of course, Tuesdays on the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN, the free mobile app, and streaming live video on the X platform at 973 ESPN. Use the hashtag SBLive. Thank you, Frank.
Thank you, Mike.
All right. Frank Close is back next week here on the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN. And, of course, we'll answer your questions here on the Sports Bash with the Phils getting ready to take on. There's your lineup against the Brewers tonight down on the X feed. If you're on the X feed, you'll see that Adam Kaplan's coming up in about 34 minutes from now. Knicks Nuggets in an hour. And John McMullen joins us at 5 o'clock tonight with all the latest on the Philadelphia Eagles at camp, OTAs, which had some news today. We'll get into that a little bit later on in the show. I'm Mike Hill. This is the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN. When we come back, something Frank said that I want to add to regarding the Phillies and some trade candidates that we talked about. I'll give you my thoughts on all three names that are being reported over at 973ESPN.com. You can check them out, and I'll comment on those coming up next.
It's
For the ones who know safety isn't a catchphrase, it's a culture. And the ones who help make sure everyone makes it home safe. For the safety-minded who watch everyone's backs, Grainger offers supplies and solutions for every industry, as well as safety assessments and training to keep your facilities safe and your people safer. Call, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Mike Gill.
And I am the voice of the voiceless.
On 97.3 ESPN and the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app.
3:33. Sports Bash, 97.3 ESPN, streaming live on the X platform at 973 ESPN. Follow us there. You can watch the show, chime in, text the text board through the mobile app, 609-403-0973. So Frank joined us. We had a couple of topics I want to hit back on, one of which he mentioned Taijuan Walker. And Sean, who's watching, says, you're not worried about Walker? Okay, Frank. Yeah, I think he said he's not worried about the whole situation with Walker, if you heard what he said. Neither am I, Frank. Excuse me, Sean. We both realize that Taijuan Walker's not pitching a playoff game. So if they want to throw him out there every 5 games for every 5th day for the next month or two, I'm not worried about that. I would be worried if I thought, oh my God, this is the only guy they got and they got nobody else and he's going to be pitching game 3 of the playoffs. That's not what he was saying. But he said, I'm not worried about them throwing him out there because they're not going to pitch him in the playoffs. They didn't pitch him in the playoffs last year. They're going to all of a sudden have a mea culpa and be like, oh, I got a great idea. Let's put Taijuan Walker out there in the playoffs. No, he's not pitching in a playoff game. He's out there to eat innings up in games in June and July. Go out there and eat up innings so that we're not wasting somebody else. We'll find somebody else in the bigger and more important months, and especially the playoffs. So Frank's not worried about Taijuan Walker, and neither am I. Quite frankly, I could care less if Taijuan Walker, if he goes out there and pitches 5 innings and gives up 4 runs for the next month and a half, who cares? I mean, come on. Really? Is this what we're complaining about? Because we have nothing else to complain about. But that would be my thoughts on that. 2, the 3 guys that Jeff Passan mentioned over at ESPN.com, he just wrote a column about, kind of the early trade vibes. Jim Bowden yesterday said that he is hearing that the Phillies are looking for this in a trade.
I've had 3 GMs tell me this week that the Phillies' number 1 priority is outfield, and they really haven't been talking to teams about bullpen. Now, I won't be surprised if they had a bullpen arm. I won't be surprised if every contender has a bullpen arm. But they've been out there looking for an outfield help. So, I don't think they're getting the offensive production they were hoping for in center field. I don't think they're getting the offensive production they're getting overall, but that's what they've been looking for.
All right, so he said outfield, they're not happy with the production. One name, Lewis Robert Jr. from the White Sox. Frank said not interested. I would probably be concurrent that I am not interested.
I think the White Sox are like the team that there's almost nobody on their roster you would even want on your team, no matter what team you are.
They are really bad.
We saw them a couple months ago. We know that this team is just not good.
Yeah, no, but Robert's been good in the past. That's the problem. Last year, the guy hit 38 home runs. I mean, 264, 38 homers, 20 stolen bases. So he's a speedy. Look, and this is a guy in his career, 338, 284, 264. He's hitting 214 this year now. He's only played in 7 games. So he's had some injury issues. I don't know. If I told you get a guy at 264 with 38 homers and 80 RBI, are you interested? Most people would say, now he struck out 172 times last year. Like, that's my problem. I think you're just getting a guy who, I mean, playoffs. He's been a pretty big playoff performer. He hit 393 in 2 playoff seasons with the White Sox. 467 he hit in 2021, and in 2020 he hit 308. I just think that, I don't know, is he the good player on the bad team right now? Is he the good player on the bad team and he's bad? He's been hurt all season long for the most part, and he got off to a slow start. So, he has a hip problem. He's supposed to be activated, I think, today, actually. But he plays center field. You got a guy who could potentially hit 30 home runs playing center field. Are we nuts to say we're not interested?
I don't think we're nuts to say we're not interested, but I think that it's the idea that are you better off keeping who you have than giving up assets to get a guy who
hits 38 homers? Yeah, that stinks.
No, who hasn't done that this year.
Well, he's been hurt. That's the caveat.
Right, and there's no evidence he's going to be healthy the rest of this year.
Well, he's supposed to be activated today, so the evidence is that he's being activated today. And I don't know that that's going to stick, but he is supposedly being activated to play in the game tonight. Now, I mean, look, Lewis Robert is a very good player. Now, this is funny because he said he wanted to be called Robert years ago, and now he has since switched to Robert. So he's one of those guys.
It's a red flag to me, man. He can't figure out what his name is.
Red flag. His numbers are very good. He has been a good player in this league. 374 games. His career averages, like if you put his career averages, 278 hitter with 15 homers. Now, part of the problem is he's played 1 full season, okay? Right. Last year, he hit 264 with 38 homers, 80 RBI, and 20 stolen bases. That's a really good player. My problem with him is the strikeouts. He strikes out a ton, and he's the kind of guy that this team has a lot of. Streaky strikeout guys. But are you saying that he's not an upgrade over Johan Rojas in the lineup? Of course he is. But I also value what Rojas brings in center field.
I also value not giving up a big prospect to get a guy who may or may not reach the potential he had last year.
There is no mention of what they would have to give up to get him. So just keep that in mind as well. All right. The other guy, Randy Arozarena. Okay. Now, I am a huge Arozarena guy. I think he has been awesome in Tampa. I love what he has brought to that Tampa Bay team. He has been dreadful this year. Really bad.
Yep.
He's hitting 162 this year, and I don't know if he's one of these guys. Now, he's 29 years old. He's another Cuban guy, by the way. So is Robert is also a Cuban guy. Arozarena has been a ton of fun. He's been awesome. He's been a postseason performer.
Right.
He has been the 1 year in 2020 for Tampa. He hit 377 with 10 homers in the playoffs. He was a monster. He has not been good this year. And I worry that maybe he's just not good anymore.
To me, I'd be more inclined to go get Arozarena than Robert because of the fact that he has a longer track record of success.
Not a good outfielder either, by the way.
He's not a good fielder. I do understand that. But if you're just looking for a right-handed part-time bat to alternate with whoever the left-handed bat is, whether it's Marsh or Dahl, I think you could do worse than a Arozarena.
Mm-hmm. I'm torn on him because I like him a lot. I really do like him a lot. I just don't.
Are you concerned that the change of scenery will not fix him?
Fair point.
Remember when the Phillies got Brandon Marsh, the theory was he wasn't a very good hitter, and he became a better hitter once he became the Philadelphia overall.
Yeah, listen, I mean, I don't... Arozarena, I'm a huge fan of. I want to stress that. I just don't know that he's the right guy. He's not a great defensive player, but he has been a winner, man. He has been he's been a better postseason player than a regular season player.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if the Phillies have brought in guys over the years who weren't great hitters elsewhere who came here and got better.
I mean, is it unfair to wonder if he's older than it says? And that he's just slowing down?
It's not unfair. I mean, we saw this with guys like, Orlando Hernandez with the Yankees and later the White Sox, right? Or Jose Contreras, pitchers like that who we were like, wow, I thought this guy was younger and his arm is like dead at the end.
All right, the last guy is Kyle Tucker. Now, we had a listener last week text in about Kyle Tucker. And at that time, we kind of said, look, I think the Astros, probably think they're kind of still in this thing and, maybe they are kind of still in now. Jeff Passan lists each team as either unloaders, which, by the way, the White Sox qualify as.
You don't say.
Hinge teams, which is where Houston is. They're kind of a hinge team right now. And Kyle Tucker, he doesn't really suggest that they're all that trying to trade him. Basically, like, they could just kind of reimagine their whole roster and then go to he mentions Bregman, Ryan Presley, the older players. Sure. He says, or they could go full imagining the roster and then ship out a guy like Kyle Tucker. Now, if you offer Kyle Tucker, now I'm interested. Okay? Not only am I interested, I'm really interested. I mean, to me, he plays right field.
He's also a left-handed
hitter. Left-handed hitter. What does that mean for Castellanos? Does Kyle Tucker go to right field and Castellanos? They're certainly not platooning those two guys. Tucker is an everyday player.
Right.
He is tied for second in the in the majors with 19 homers. He's an RBI guy. He's been a clutch guy. You told me I got Kyle Tucker. I'm in.
I don't like the left-handed bat. I don't think we need another left-handed bat, Mike. I don't understand how bringing in another lefty is going to help a team if you get into a playoff series with a team like, let's say, the Braves, and you got Max Fried and guys like that coming to the
Chris Sale,
the Braves got two lefties right there, and they got other guys in the bullpen where it's like, well, if Kyle Tucker and Schwarber and all these guys are in the lineup, then what happens?
I get it. Listen, it is the one knock, and he's not great against lefties this year, 218. He is 340 on base against lefties. He will draw a walk. That's something. But even 218, 340 on base, he's better than Nick Castellanos has been.
Sure, but unless you're getting rid of Nick Castellanos, I don't see how you're going to tell Castellanos, hey, bro, you're
I don't know how that would work. How that would can now Kyle Tucker. From my knowledge, I'm just going off of memory. I don't watch every single. How much left field has he played?
He has started 61 games in left field.
Okay, so he could play left field.
So he can play.
Yes, he could play left field. What does that mean for Marsh?
He's actually played 4 games in center too, for what it's worth.
Well, okay, but here's the domino effect. Can I play Kyle Tucker in left? He becomes Marsh. And Marsh now is the strict platoon with Rojas in center field.
That's 3 lefties.
Against righty. I said a platoon.
Right, against righty. Okay, so
on games where lefties pitch, Marsh is not in the lineup.
Rojas is put in there. Do you leave Tucker in the lineup, though?
Well, yeah. I mean, he's an everyday player. He doesn't sit against lefties.
It's a lot of left-handed bats.
It is, but you're facing a right-handed starter that day. Now, your point is, late in the game, you're facing a team with a lot. Okay, I get that. Also, you're facing a left-handed pitcher. You are essentially, Marsh would be out, and Rojas would be in. Your outfield would be Tucker,
Rojas,
Castellanos, and then a platoon in center field.
I mean, I don't hate it. I'm a little nervous about the left-handed hitter, the strikeouts.
Listen, I agree with the whole left-handed hitter thing as well, that I think that's another left-handed bat in the lineup, but he's a pretty darn good player.
He's a very good player.
And he's a young player. He's keep in mind what Frank said as well. Castellanos, next year is his last year. Could Tucker then become the guy who ends up taking over the right field spot?
Yeah, my theory I've thrown out there, Mike, is the Phillies can go into this upcoming offseason, and call teams and say, hey, Castellanos is good every other year. You want him for next year?
Or you're also getting Castellanos on the last year of his deal, so that he'll be off the deal. And some teams like to get that veteran player that's not a good team, like a Pittsburgh or a Cincinnati, so that they could trade him at the deadline. So you see that happen a lot.
That's true.
A couple text messages real quick. Tucker would be awesome, but would cost multiple top prospects. Yes, Tucker. And by the way, somebody texted in about Lewis Robert, that he would cost a lot of prospects as well. And by the way, the article does say, let me just bring that part up from Jeff Passan. I'll do that I got to bring it back up, and I'll do that on the other side. Jeff Passan does mention that whole part about the prospects and two other things that he thinks the Phillies could be looking to add. That's next. This is the Sports Bash live on 97.3 ESPN, the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app, powered by First Bank of Sea Island, streaming live on the X platform at 973 ESPN. Use the hashtag SBLive.
For the ones who know safety isn't a catchphrase, it's a culture. And the ones who help make sure everyone makes it home safe. For the safety-minded who watch everyone's backs, Grainger offers supplies and solutions for every industry, as well as safety assessments and training to keep your facilities safe and your people safer. Call, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
The Sports Bash with Mike Gill on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app.
3:53, Sports Bash, 97.3 ESPN, the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app, streaming live on the X platform at 973 ESPN. Use the hashtag SBLive to find us. If you're watching, hit the like button, hit the repost button, hit the whatever you call it on X. Is it like still? Is that the heart? Is that a like? Or is that a love?
I thought it was a like.
Okay. Well, if you're watching us, hit the like button. If you're watching us, hit the repost button.
I mean, if it's a love button, that really changes our social media activity altogether, and that makes me uncomfortable.
This hour brought to you by Broadlee's Plumbing, Heating, Air Conditioning. Broadlee's, your trusted source for heating, plumbing service, and installation. For generations, call 609-390-3907 or visit them online at broadlees.net. I'm Mike Gill. So tomorrow I'm heading to London. And one of my stops is the Bermondsey Beer Mile.
All right.
So I had a buddy of mine, I guess, is listening to the show, and he said, I'm going to London. What are you doing Saturday? I said, I'm going to the Beer Mile. He responded with, what's the Beer Mile? Don't you think that's self-explanatory?
It's a mile of beer, right?
There you go. If Josh can get it, you can get it. If he can change, we all can change. Everyone can change.
What are you, Rocky IV now?
It is Rocky IV. Good pull by you. The Bermondsey Beer Mile is a mile of craft beer bars, one after another. There's 17 of them on one strip.
Sounds awesome to me.
Sounds like I will be there Saturday. So if you're going to London, I'll see you at the Bermondsey Beer Mile. Football at 4 is up next.
Jersey, 97.3 ESPN presents the Sports Bash with Mike Gill. It's time for Football at 4 with Adam Kaplan, powered by the Inside the Birds podcast.
I give my heart and soul to this franchise, as so many of us do.
Now live, this is Football at 4.
Football at 4, powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. It's brought to you by Bet365. Whatever the sport, whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Adam Kaplan from the Inside the Birds podcast is here, which you can get on all podcasting platforms. Just search Inside the Birds for their YouTube channel content as well, including today's Football at 4. with Adam Kaplan here on the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN. Eagles OTAs finishing up about an hour ago, and we do have some news up there, Adam Kaplan. What's happening, my man?
Yeah, it was good to be out there. Man, it was hot, high 80s, Mike. For the hour and 5 crisp practice, I thought it was kind of funny. You know, I always, just making plans today, I figured I'd be out of there by, 3 o'clock, 3:15. It was over at 2:35. It was only an hour and 35, actually an hour and 37 minutes to be exact. Hour and 7 minutes. But bottom line is it was crisp. I mean, it was a really well-run practice, mostly 7-on-7s, a little bit of teamwork late in practice, but it's your typical mandatory camp stuff. The energy was better. You know what? I could be wrong. I didn't hear music. You know, Mike, these practices many, many years ago, practices with Chip Kelly, you remember the music, the techno music at practice? I didn't hear any. I don't remember hearing any. That's why I could actually hear people speaking. If it was very low. But it was, to summarize this, though, it was a crisp practice. We'll get into kind of some of the stuff that I saw and stuff that was interesting. In fact, one thing definitely very surprising, which we'll get into, and some of the depth chart stuff, again, as I warn people, what you see today, you may not see tomorrow. In fact, the media didn't get a lot. Obviously, we're not allowed at OT practices very much. And there were a couple things that happened at OTAs when the media wasn't there, which we saw today, which we'll get into.
All right, well, let's get into some things. And, yes, one of the big stories, was James Bradberry. Was he going to show up? Was he not going to show up? It's a mandatory. He did show up, but they didn't play him where you think they would have played him.
Well, okay, so just to be clarified, Nick Sirianni, their head coach, did say that we were going to see James Bradberry at safety today. Remember, he played nickel last year because they had to. They ran out of nickel corners. He obviously played outside corner. But today, Mike, and he's a right cornerback, by the way, we probably would have seen him at safety, but he left practice very early, went into the medical tent within the first 5 minutes. So we never really got to see him at safety. But the big story, Mike, and our Jeff Mosher had this exclusive note for us, the day that Becton traded, in fact, the next day, I think we probably did our Inside the Bird Show, and Jeff said that they're going to cross-train at guard. And not only see, this is what's interesting, Mike. Lane Johnson did confirm during his press conference today that, and it had to be when the media wasn't there, he actually lined up at some guard. Well, Mike, Landon Dickerson was not there today at left guard. He was the only player not to be there. He had an excused absence. Becton didn't run with the 2s or the 3s. He ran with the 1s, filling in. So I was not expecting that. I figured they'd work him in, maybe with the 3s or the 2s. And what I found interesting, I might be the only person to pick this. I pick up little small things. Becton looked really smooth. Now, again, we're not watching the practice tape, so we go by what our eyes told you, or look like. So let's not go overboard here. But there's a scouting term. With offensive linemen, how does the player look like coming out of an awkward stance? He did not look awkward. I was surprised. In fact, Lane Johnson kind of, he hit his shoulder and goes, "Good job." So. I wouldn't read a lot into it, but he could wind up being the top backup at guard. Who knows if this works out? Again, when the media wasn't there, he worked at a guard. That's why no one really knew what Becton was doing of it, because they only saw him lining up at guard. When he wasn't there, he was lining up they saw him lining up at tackle, Mike. Mm-hmm. And then now, when he wasn't there, Lane Johnson confirmed he actually lined up at guard. He did today, so that was kind of stunning to me. Again, second-team guard? In fact, I shouldn't even say that. He ran with the 1s.
The 1 team, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, well, and I thought it was interesting at first because, Dickerson not being there, fine, they need a left guard. But if you're going to look at Becton as a guard, would you not give him a shot to get into that right guard competition?
Here's why. Now, again, they've got 2 practices left, and we're going to look into what side did Becton line up at when the media wasn't there in OTAs. Was it right guard, left guard, or both? Don't know.
Right.
We're going to have to find out. It's a great question you asked, Mike, because I figured Matt Hennessy would line up at left guard today. That didn't happen. That, by the way, as we noted last week on our show, he never started a game at right guard. Why would he not line up at left guard, where he's more natural? He didn't. Becton did today. I have to preface this because people run with stuff or start thinking things are going to happen. Most stuff that happens that's new in OTAs or specifically mandatory camp, coaches have told me over there they experiment with stuff just in case something happens. Like Bradberry, I know he played nickel. He started playing inside in training camp. I don't know that he did last year in OTAs or mandatory camp, but I just thought it was interesting. We may see this. This is something in fact, now that they did this, and we're going to find out what the practice tape looked like. It's one thing for my eyes to see it, and that's another thing for someone who actually works for the team. And it wasn't Max Sharping who just got there. This is his first practice. But, again, we'll move on here in a second. This is just something that was the most notable thing by far at practice today.
Yeah, no, that's, that caught my eye as well, that he was playing the left guard spot there. That's Mekhi Becton, who has been a tackle primarily, obviously, former first-round pick with the Jets, filling in for Dickerson, who was excused today. But that's something to keep an eye on. Will Becton will he get those right guard reps when we get to training camp, based on what they see here? We'll see about that. Let's go back to the Bradbury thing a little bit, because I want to get your opinion, Adam. He's at safety. Does he project as a safety to you at all, or is this just them saying, we don't want him in the room, just go play safe? How do you read this?
Mike, no. Okay, let me explain. So this is just called a hypothesis, what's called an educated opinion. It's just kind of where I think this thing is at. He's owed $10.85 million fully guaranteed. They don't want to eat the contract. They know he can't start anymore. You've got Isaiah Rodgers, we'll get into him, Ringo, who worked with the ones today. They kind of know where James is in his career. He obviously fell off completely last season. They didn't expect that, but he did. No one's going to take his contract right now. We're only in early June. They don't have a trade market for him right now. They don't want to eat the money. Well, he's not going to work at corner. And when I say, look, Mike, let me just give you, since you brought this up. Slay's your left corner. Quinyon Mitchell will be the right corner. Right now, because he's not ready yet, Ringo took the work with ones. By the way, looked good today. Transition really good. Now, again, I didn't see every rep that he took, but I saw about 9 to 10 reps from him. He looked pretty smooth. And his issue's always been stiffness and transitioning. Looked good today. All like it is. Didn't look good to start last season. Looked good late last season, so we'll see. We'll see what this really means over time, but definitely looked good. But if you really look at Isaiah Rodgers now is becoming a factor. Again, we got a long way to go, but he looks good. This is the first test that he passed the off-season test, Mike, to show that he's back. Eagles didn't know this. That's why we were reluctant to say anything about his role until they saw him. Everything we've been told privately has been good. Eli Ricks went with the third. It doesn't mean he won't work at the second tomorrow. I wouldn't read into that. And look, Josh Jobs is a special teams player. Only he had some good special teams plays today. Where's James Bradbury fit in quarter, Mike?
I agree with that portion of it. I just, one of the questions we were wondering, Adam, leading into this is, okay, does Vic Fangio say, hey, look, I run a zone scheme. He's a zone corner. I want to see what this guy, like the fact that they're not even giving him a shot to show if he has anything left in the tank.
But Mike, by the way, it'll be Vic's call. I mean, Howie can't tell Vic what to do. They talk about it, and he may say to him, hey, could you take a look? Because we don't. I'm just hypothetically talking about what the conversation would look like. Hey, could you listen? We don't have a trade market. Could you work them out at another? Could you try somewhere? Because we have young kids who want to look at corner. You could say, hey, yeah, you know what? We have light numbers. Think about it, Mike. Let's go over this. Gardner Johnson and Blankenship are your starters. C.D. Brown, who's a third safety, won't be ready till training camp if he's ready at all then, or it's a matter of when is he going to be ready. He's taking mental reps. Tristan McCollum was the third safety today. But Tristan McCollum wasn't even on the roster last season, Mike. He was on the practice squad. And Andre Sam's an undrafted rookie who's pretty interesting. I was talking to someone in personnel with a number team and another team who mentioned him for me to keep an eye on him. And also, Mekhi Garner is going back from corner and safety. They don't have a third safety now who's really ready. So it makes some sense on the surface. They have a numbers issue at safety. They need safeties.
Yeah.
The corner, they have too many guys. Like last summer, I warned people when they were saying, they have too many corners. No, they don't. They're not good enough for corner.
And the corners you mentioned, just to kind of go back, Ringo ran first team, but Isaiah Rodgers looks like a factor. Mitchell saw him playing a little slot as well. What about Cooper DeJean?
Yeah, I didn't see Mitchell playing slots specifically. It might have been on 7-on-7s, but DeJean played nickel safety and outside corner nickel in sub. Now that's probably. Now I know that the new DB's coach wants them to. Christian Parker wants him to eventually, probably training camp, just line up at one position. He's not doing safety, which we know right this year that's not what they want to do. Long term would rule that out, by the way. Malcolm Jenkins moved to safety his second year with the Saints. He played corner in his first year. So remember, it's when you draft a player specifically in the first or second round, it's how do they project over 4 or 6 years, not just year one. Year one, I get it. They have a specific role in mind, and it's what Howie Roseman said basically after the draft, kind of the way they saw him. But that's it. I mean, it's I didn't see Rodgers in nickel, though, in terms of playing inside. I didn't see that. I know some people wondered about that, but again, it's kind of early. Didn't see Zach McPherson today. I specifically, I think he's still number 27. And, Mike, the other problem is so many players have changed numbers. Usually I was joking with someone with their PR staff. When I first started covering them, I didn't need a lineup sheet. I knew the numbers by heart. I could maybe name 7 or 8 numbers. It's so hard without looking at a sheet.
Yeah, well, they got a lot of new faces, not in new places, and then changing the numbers as well. Cooper DeJean, second team, nickel stuff, some outside corner. Sure, he'll be bouncing all over the place. You mentioned that corner room. We all been kind of wanting to see what's happening there. Interesting what would be going on. Any linebacking stuff that? Yeah,
sure. Yeah, this is interesting. And again, this is just an off-season practice. We can't say it's definite. Certainly can't say it's definite, but. Well, Devin White's going to be a starter. The question is it going to be Nakobe Dean or Bond? It's not. Bond, it was, again, I know Nakobe's coming off a major injury. He had a Liz Frank injury that he had the rupture. So you got to understand, they got to work him in slowly. It's going to take him a while. So I'm not saying he won't start, but let's just give you what we saw.
Mm-hmm.
It was White and Zach Bond, who they're cross-training. Right now he's an inside backer. We did not see him line up at outside backer. Remember, basically, Mike, they're 2 inside backer defense. The guys they say are linebackers are edge rushers. They're really not linebackers. Bryce Huff's not a linebacker. He's an edge rusher. The second team defense at ILB was Burks and Van Sumeren. Now, again, Dean's just not ready. He ran with the third team, but we're early here. This is a very short practice. Trotter worked with deep backups, but again, he's a fifth-round rookie. This is the most depth. Now, you could question how good the depth is, but this is the most depth they've had at inside backer, Mike, in several years.
All right, Adam Kaplan, Football at 4 from the Inside the Birds podcast, and I'm sure more on the Inside the Birds podcast. And got a couple things on the offensive side of the ball. These mini camps, they're for the skill guys a lot of times. John Ross, former first-round pick. By the way, he was picked 9th. Picked 10th was Patrick Mahomes. But John Ross is here. He was picked in the draft number 9 because of his speed. Is he a guy that on this field without the pads looks like he has a shot?
He looked good. Now, again, they have no depth at receiver other than Campbell. Campbell's definitely the 3 because he's the only guy that they have really could play inside or outside, and he's not. I gotta look into this. I don't know who A.J. Brown's backup would be. It would have to be Paris Campbell by default because I don't have anyone else.
Right.
But he doesn't really play that position. He's more of a move position. He's more of a Z, which is Devontae Smith's position. So we're going to look into that. But one of the things I thought was interesting about John Ross, look at my notes, is, and I outlined this, he caught a lot of short area passes. I can understand. He didn't just do that in 7-on-7s, though. He did a little bit of that in team. I'm like, all right, maybe it's. I don't know if they asked him to do that or it's a function of coverage. I don't know. Ringo trailed him on trail technique. He did an excellent job on a 9 route. He was with him, which is good. I mean, because this is the thing with Ringo, the knock on personnel people that they had around him in the league is his really poor transition in college at Georgia, and it was because of stiffness. Didn't see that today, and you saw him a little bit more fluid late last season. But again, we're early here. We can't make any definitive judgments until we get into training camp when it really matters and where the competition is ratcheted up, because that's when guys win roles. Mike, they don't win roles here. They start to develop roles, but you don't win roles here. Other offensive notes here: Fred Johnson line up as second team, I believe, tackle, because of Becton playing inside. Max Sharping, I only saw I can't remember his number, but Max Sharping, I watched the individual drills. He was just working in the individual drills because this is his first practice. They're so light at receiver, Mike. It's Jacob Harris didn't work today. I was disappointed about that. I don't know what his injury is, but he didn't work today. He's number 46, by the way, for those screwing home. John Ross is number 83. I watched Austin Watkins. He's the kid that I know a lot of people are excited about. He worked with the third team. Oh, and Nia Smith, I should mention this one before we get out of here, number 82. he dropped some punts today, and I know the coaches were getting on him, but this is what happens. And by the way, he was the only one not returning punts well. And another thing that was comical, I read absolutely nothing into this. I have no idea why Gardner Johnson, number 8, by the way, is C.J. Gardner Johnson's new number. He worked with the punt returners today a little bit, which I have to look into if he's ever done it before, but they had a bunch of guys working in punt return today, including Isaiah Rodgers, by the way.
All right, there you go. A lot of Eagles OTAs. Big news was Becton at guard and Bradbury at safety, as obviously we just talked about with Adam Kaplan from the Inside the Birds podcast. And don't forget, check out the podcast on all podcasting platforms. And the YouTube channel, just search Inside the Birds, and you can get all of their great content over there. And just like Football at 4, which we'll be back tomorrow with Mosher, Andrew on Thursday, and Adam will be back on Friday. I will not talk to you then, Adam. I will talk to you next week, pal.
I heard you're going to England, Mike. Nice, man.
Yes.
Some beer fest. I heard you yelling yesterday's show. That's pretty cool.
Little high tea for me tomorrow when I
We'll be with Mr. Newman. No, that you would have to know. Well, you know that one Seinfeld. It's a Seinfeld reference.
Yes, and I got it.
Nice. That's why you said it. Yeah. You told me you're not a movie guy, so I can't figure you out. But that's funny.
By the way, did you see Sirianni today? He says. When responding about the Giant fans, he said, we got your best player. I mean,
he's funny. He's a funny guy. I don't know what to make of Nick. He's a good coach. I mean, look, guy had a winning record his first 3 years. But it's just funny that, the tennis thing a couple years ago with a fan he got into it with. You saw what he said in the runway in Kansas City.
Yep,
you just don't know what to make. But
well, you wondered if he was going to scale back a little bit. He definitely was on the hot seat, no question, right?
But you got to be yourself, Mike. You can't be neutered. You can't act like you don't have any juice anymore.
Yep.
Just because he's not calling the plays, it's not his scheme. You got to be yourself. And by the way, he was very active today. He was going from station to station. It's good to see.
I guess it's not. You can't see a lot, but is it evident that he's not like? Does the offense look different? I mean, anything noticeable there yet?
Well, he wasn't calling the plays, but yeah, the only thing. No, I wasn't looking for it. I just noticed it. He was going from station to station, but he's a big observer. Like, remember, Brian Johnson was calling the plays. He hasn't called plays, Nick, since midway of the first season. As a CEO head coach, I know he's involved in offense, but it was his scheme. You would see him go to station. Now, one more thing, I would tell you, when Andy Reid had issues with Jim Washburn and Juan Castillo, he was over with the defense because it was a train wreck. That's a different story. That's because you've got a problem going on. You got to make sure you got it under control. Nick here is just a CEO head coach now, even more than before, and he's just walking from station to station. Probably a little bit more, but I wouldn't read into that. It's more because remember, he did say today. Because people are trying to figure out how much of the Old Eagles offense will even be in this with Kellen Moore. There's no way to know that, and they're not going to tell us that. Nick talked today about some of how they're integrating stuff.
Yeah.
But what Kellen Moore did say last week was they want to keep the stuff that's really, really good. Why would you completely junk it?
Right.
Yeah, you're going to run your own scheme and you'll call the plays, but the stuff that Jalen likes, you're going to keep that.
The last thing, push in or out.
Oh, I don't know.
Is that a Kelsey?
They're not doing that. Right? They didn't do that today.
No, obviously no. But is that a Kelsey? Is that predicated from Kelsey?
I don't know. I don't know. There's no way they're getting rid of that. There's just no way.
Gotcha.
They can't. Look. They've created a controversy. That's how good they are at it, Mike. Great question. We won't know until training camp. And before I get out of here, Mike, there's so much we won't know till training camp. Oh, I'll give you one more nugget. We saw some motion today, which we know is going to be in the offense because Moore's offense is based on motion. Didn't see shifting today, but you're not going to see that until training camp, most likely. How much motion they're going to do, we have no answer to that. We won't know until training camp. But the backs catching the football, we saw some of that. We've been fooled before. I wouldn't read anything to that. There's just so much we're not going to know, but we did see enough today, which we just gave you.
Adam Kaplan gives us a lot on this Football at 4. OTAs, good to have football back, hot at the NovaCare Complex. 2 more days of it. We'll have it on tomorrow's Football at 4. Thanks, Adam.
You got it, thanks.
All right, there's Adam Kaplan. Great breakdown from him today on the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN, the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app, streaming live on the X platform at 97.3 ESPN. Use the hashtag SBLive. Coming up, Nick's Nuggets are here. What is on Mr. Earnshaw's mind today? Nick's Nuggets are coming up here on the Sports Bash. Your text message. I like this one from Cole and LBI. Cole's a Jets fan. Now, remember this. He says Becton's a really good offensive lineman. Best offensive lineman his rookie year. Then he got hurt, gained some weight. Becton's a beast. He's an absolute road paver. With some better coaching, he could reach an all-pro level. Question will be, though, Cole, at what position? Can he be an all-pro right guard? I'm intrigued. CC, very intrigued. All right, when we come back, Nick Earnshaw's in the house. He's got another edition of Nick's Nuggets. Plus, his question of the day is coming up during South Jersey Sports Center. Keep it locked to the one and only Sports Bash live on 97.3 ESPN.
This is the story of the one. As head of maintenance at a concert hall, he knows the show must always go on. That's why he works behind the scenes, ensuring every light is working, the HVAC is humming, and his facility shines. With Grainger's supplies and solutions for every challenge he faces, plus 24/7 customer support, his venue never misses a beat. Call quickgrainger.com or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Mike Gill.
Do I have everybody's attention now?
On 97.3 ESPN and the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app.
427 Sports Bash live, 97.3 ESPN, the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app. Mike Gill with you on the Bash Tuesday. Feels like a happy hour Friday for me. I should give out my happy hour Friday pick since I won't be here because I did have a couple this weekend up at the Union game. Oh, yes, Nick Earnshaw. I was at the Union game, hit a little brewery up there called the Laramie, and man, they had some goodies up there outside Subaru Park. It's time for today's edition of Nick's Nuggets, and they're brought to you by Bet365. Whatever the sport, whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. There's Nick Earnshaw. What's up, dude?
What's going on, Mike? Nice to see you. I forgot to mention to you yesterday, I did see the picture you put out, going to Subaru Park, going to the Union game. Now, was that your first Union game you've ever been to? Or
it's my first professional soccer game.
Wow, ever. How about that? So what'd you think? What'd you think of the atmosphere there?
I mean, it's cool. It's a good atmosphere.
The first time last year.
It's a great atmosphere. I mean, even if like I'm not going to sit here and say I'm a soccer fan. I mean, but I'd go again. It was a great atmosphere. Anything that's outdoors. I mean, they had that whole new, it's like a brand new outdoor. Apparently it wasn't, I don't know if it was even there last year. Like there's a whole new, like the garage doors. There was like an old, kind of like a desolate, abandoned place. They turned it into a whole like outdoor kind of a Union brewery or something. But then there's an actual brewery around the corner from it called the Laramie. Small little place, really tiny, but it was full and it was good. They had a lot of nice choices there.
Yeah, I'm going to have to get back over to the Union at some point and see a game. And I have to stop by that brewery you're talking about too. And Friday, I guess Ryan and I are going to have to hold down the fort, right? For Happy Hour Friday.
That's right. You guys will be over at the LPGA right outside McGettigan's 19th hole. So you're going to have to see if they'll bring you a little something over there. A little
taste
now,
testing,
normally they bring over a lot of, like the tail tenders, a lot of good food they'll bring over, but say, hey, it's Happy Hour Friday. You got a little something for me, a little cold.
Yeah, it'd be nice during the show. Maybe we'll have a few, and it'll make for some interesting radio.
Yeah, Laramie, Walking on Clouds was the name of the cold one I had over at the Laramie Beer Company. That is in 15 Engel Street in Chester. So it's like right up the street from you. You got to walk like past the stadium.
Okay.
A little past it, but like 2 blocks past it. Make a right. It's down a side street. Really tiny little spot.
All right, I'm going to make a mental note. Next time I go to Subaru Park, I'm stopping there. No doubt about it. It's got to be on the way in before the game. Boom, I'm stopping there.
Got to.
Definitely putting it on the list.
We went up like around 5. We got there about 5 o'clock and hung out for about 2.5 hours before. So we had, by the time I didn't care what team was kicking which way.
That's the way to do it. That's how you got to do it when you're going to a soccer game. Listen, I'm not the biggest soccer guy either, but hey, that sounds like a great time. And it's always fun to go to those Union games. I had a good time when I went for the first time last year for sure. And they had the Messi game last year as well too. He came out. I'm sure that was a crazy spectacle.
They're supposed to be there. Miami's supposed to be there on Saturday the 15th. That's the day because my buddy was supposed to go to the Orioles game with me.
Right.
And then he has season tickets, so he said they're playing Miami. Now, he doesn't think Messi's going to play in the game,
right.
But, his sons want to go to the game, so he's going to go there. So now I'm looking for someone to go to a Baltimore game with me.
There you go. Yeah, I'm heading down that Friday to the Baltimore game. We're taking the shift down there, so we're going to the Friday game. My co-host couldn't get off work, so we had to go Friday. I would have been there with you, Mike. I would have been there.
All right. Well, I'll see if maybe I might go Friday. I might go to both games. We'll see.
All right, cool. If you're at Friday, we'll be there. The shift, our podcast will be down there. We'll be doing an episode from wherever. Who knows where we're going to do it yet, but we're going to do an episode from down there. But I got to get rolling on these Nuggets at some point, right? All right, here we go. Nugget number one. We got to talk about James Bradberry. And today's 97.3 ESPN question of the day, would you want the Eagles to keep James Bradberry if they move him to safety permanently? Now, I heard your Football at 4 segment with Adam Kaplan. Always a great guest. He always provides some great information. Those guys inside the Birds are absolutely fantastic. But I like what he was talking about. Like, they just kind of are filling guys in at safety because they don't have a ton of safety, right? Sidney Brown's hurt. After that, they don't have a ton, right? Cooper DeJean, maybe he gets some run at safety too. They're just kind of sticking Bradberry there, saying, to me, that just shows you, oh, yeah, we have plenty of corners. We're not really going to need you over there. Let's just try and move you to safety for now here at the mandatory minis. It just seems like they're too crowded a corner, obviously. Their direction seems to be younger anyway with where he's at in his career. He took a massive step back last year, and, it kind of shows where he's at in his career at this point. To me, it's just time to move on. I understand the money aspect of it. They don't want to eat the dollars. But at some point you might have to, because it just seems like there's nowhere to put James Bradberry on this team. And do you want to cut a younger guy to keep him? I don't think you want to, because he struggled mightily last year. And I don't know what you're going to be able to get out of him at this stage of his career. He had a great year during the Super Bowl year. But at this point, it's like you want to see the younger guys.
I don't see him projecting as a safety. To me, this whole thing's kind of bizarre. Like, hey, you know what? I'll give you a shot to come in and show me that last year was kind of like a fluke and see if you have anything left in the tank. They didn't even give him that courtesy. So to me, writing's on the wall, probably a goner.
Yeah, do you think they cut him? Because according to Kaplan, it sounded like there's no really market for him at this point. Because what are you going to get for James Bradberry at his age? What he showed last year, and then you're putting him at safety now kind of as just, we got to stick you somewhere. You're not going to get any run as a corner on this team because we got plenty of young ones that are ready to go. I don't know what they're going to do with him. I think they're just going to have to eat the money at this point. It's the writing's on the wall.
No doubt. And, cause he said they don't want to have to eat the money, but you might have to eat the money. Yeah. This sounded like, from his perspective, a last ditch effort to try to get some interest in him by saying, hey, he can maybe play. Cause a lot of corners in their later years go play safety. Right. But as Adam said, I asked him, does he project? He said, he shot it down right away. No, he doesn't. So yeah, I agree with Adam. Don't see that happening. So, I think we're, seeing the end of James Bradberry. I don't think, James Bradberry is now in the bin of the Nick Castellanos, Taiwan Walkers, like guys that you're just over.
Yeah, you're just sick and tired of him. Is he the Tobias? So we're going to use the acronym of Tobias Harris.
Tobias Harris is another one.
He's the Tobias Harris of the Eagles right now. I mean, that's what James Bradberry essentially is. And we're going to use it for these type of players, I think, moving forward. And I'm fine using that. He got paid a lot of money in the offseason prior to last year. No one really thought they'd bring him back. They did. And Slay, they kept both of them, but James Bradberry, he took a massive step backward. And I just think moving into safety, it's just like saying, hey, yeah, we need some guys out there to play safety. Just put a body out there. That's what James Bradberry is at this point in his career. Unfortunate, but it's time to move on from the Bradberry era in Philadelphia, because they got a lot of young corners ready, waiting in the wings. They got Quinyon Mitchell, who's probably going to start. Cooper DeJean they draft. Eli Ricks, Keely Ringo.
Ringo ran with the first team today, by the way.
Yeah, I did see that. Ringo, you have some young corners that they want to get into the game and get experience. Bradberry, everything's pointing to signs he will not be an Eagle by the time week 1 comes around. Just no doubt about it.
I would agree. that it doesn't look likely.
No, not at all. All right. we'll move to nugget number 2 and talk about Rhys Hoskins last night. The Rhys return was a pretty fascinating one, Mike. Like, you had his first at bat, you had the standing ovation. Great. They played the video, the bat spike, etc. That was a cool moment. Then fast forward a little bit later into the game. How about the JT Realmuto play? When Rhys was on first base, he steals second. Then there's a base hit, and Johan Rojas throws Rhys Hoskins out at home, and JT kind of gave him a little slap on the backside and gave him a nice smirk going back to the dugout, because it's pretty funny. Rhys stole second and then gets thrown out at home. I thought that was awesome. And then you had the home run boos / cheers. It was an eventful return for Rhys Hoskins. Now, I got to ask you this, Mike, based on last night. Now, during the walk-up appearance, his first at-bat when he got the ovation, what did you make of them playing this song, the old walk-up song? They don't really do that for many players. They did it for Chase Utley.
That's it. They've only done it for Chase Utley. That's it.
Did you like it? Did you think that was appropriate for Rhys Hoskins? Now, Rhys wasn't Chase Utley-esque, I don't think, as a player here. He was a very good player, going to be remembered fondly, but I don't think he's walk-up song level. The slide wasn't, that song wasn't like big like Bryson Stott's or Chase Utley's.
No, listen, and I said before, like, this shows, like, the Phillies fans just, like, how, like, this was such a unique situation, because, like, Hoskins was a good player, not a great player. He was a popular player, but not a wildly popular player. But the fact that what he did in that playoff, now, we laughed about this. He hit 159 in the playoffs that year. But he had 4 home runs in the Padres series, and every one of them seemingly was bigger than the next. So people remember those moments that he gave them, and they are appreciative of it. And that's why I think it's unique. Now, the fact that he's a homegrown player, he was there for the bad times. He pulled out through the other side to the good times. And quite frankly, I don't think, he or the team wanted this divorce.
Right.
It was almost like, hey, listen, like, we want to stay together, but it's just inevitable. We just can't. It's not working for whatever reason. I mean, and they just both knew it. Like, it wasn't going anywhere.
Yeah, like, the divorce wasn't, I guess you could say, like, listen, you couldn't put him anywhere. There was really nowhere to put him. And you can't live with Schwarber out in left field. You certainly can't have Hoskins out in left field. So that's where it's like, yeah, Bryce is the first baseman. He's the face of the franchise, so you can't really move on from him. And I think T-Mac said it on the TV broadcast last night that Rob Thompson likened Hoskins' leadership to Derek Jeter. So clearly, I mean, it's a pretty high praise from Rob Thompson to say that about Rhys Hoskins. I mean, he was an integral part.
I don't know that I've ever seen too many situations either where, they had Bryce Harper clapping, Suarez they showed. I mean, guys were literally stopping what they were doing to give him, it shows you the impact that he had on this team. And I wonder a lot. I wasn't the biggest Hoskins guy in the world, but I do appreciate what he may have brought them last year had he been healthy.
Right. Yeah. It stinks that he went down early on in spring training and, missed the entire season. Didn't even get a chance to see him in the postseason either. But yeah, I think it shows what he meant to this team, the moments that he gave people. I mean, you saw the embrace at first base. Harper gives him a big hug, and you saw JT and him laughing about the stolen base and then getting thrown out at home. Now, did you notice that little bit of a walk tour back towards the to the Phillies dugout? What did you make of that after the play? Like, he started kind of going back to the Phillies dugout with JT. I think he forgot for a second. It was in the moment. Oh, I'm not a Philly anymore. He had to think about it, I think, for a second. Well, that's kind of the way I took that.
That game last night was filled with moments of, like, when kids are growing up and they play together and then they go to different high schools and then they face each other. Just like, hey, we grew up together. Now we're playing against each other. That playful, JT kind of giving him a little, we got you. Then he steals the base and he's kind of laughing at JT like, dude, there's no way he should have stole a base on JT Realmuto. Like, those kind of things. Like, it was just a fun atmosphere, that whole thing. He's running the wrong way, potentially, kind of like muscle memory. Listen, I think that Rhys Hoskins, if he could have made the decision, he would have stayed in Philadelphia. I don't think there's
1,000%.
any question about it.
1,000%. He would have stayed in Philadelphia if he had the choice. It just, there was no really place to put him at this point in the direction the Phillies were going. But yeah, it was a fantastic atmosphere. And yeah, it kind of reminds you of like, hey, you're playing with a buddy on a travel team. You see them against each other in high school. That was kind of the atmosphere and the feeling you got with these guys last night. It was pretty cool to see Rhys's return. Now it's, it's all fair game now. Now he can get booed. You got the ovation. He's on the Brewers now. You can boo him now if he hits another home run tonight. That was pretty funny stuff. All right, nugget number 3. Now, another guy who had a big home run for the Phillies last night, David Dahl, in his debut with the Phils, coming up from AAA after the Brandon Marsh injury. He's in left field. He's hit very well down in the minors. He comes up with a big home run last night. Mike, what is it with these bench guys, the everlasting bench the Phillies have coming up in big moments? He continues to hit well like he has it all year but mainly a designated hitter with the Iron Pigs. He gets a big home run last night, Mike. Is Dahl a guy you want to maybe keep around and see what he's got through the rest of the season? Because the Whit Merrifield thing hasn't really panned out.
Well, it's going to be interesting because, yes, he was tearing up AAA, like 340, 12 homers down there. So he was ripping the cover off the ball down there. He's been an all-star player. He made the all-star game with Colorado in 2019. He was a first-round draft choice, 10th overall. So he obviously at one point was highly regarded with a lot of talent. It has not worked out for him. He has not been a major league player with any substance other than the one all-star season. But if he gets a 3-week run here and starts, tearing the cover off the ball and showing something, they're going to have another decision to make, right? I mean, Brandon Marsh, could you platoon him and Rojas? And then, I don't know what happened. Jeff Passan put this article out today about 3 players that the Phillies, could be intrigued by. All 3 of them are interesting. Luis Robert, a center fielder who hit 35 home runs last year. I mean, it would add some power to your lineup. Is not having a great year. He's hurt right now. Arozarena, I'm a huge fan of, but he's been terrible this year. Kyle Tucker, I think you'd have to give up a ton to get him. Plus, he probably won a lot of money. So, I don't know. Do you just keep with what you got, Dahl, Merrifield, and hope somebody emerges? When Marsh comes back, maybe Dahl is hitting. Marsh goes and platoons in center with Rojas. You still got to figure out your Castellanos situation out there. So they got a lot of outfield questions to go.
I'd even add this to you, Mike, because Cody Clemens is hurt right now. That's another guy coming off the bench that's giving you a little bit of pop as well. Now, do you have to make a decision there? Do you want to go Cody Clemens? David Dahl is one of your backup outfielders coming off the bench, a guy who can pinch hit. Do you want to go righty-lefty? Like, that's another decision the Phillies have to make. If Dahl continues to hit really well at the major league level like he has in the minor leagues throughout the majority of this year, then, maybe that's another decision you have to make, even if it doesn't involve Marsh and Rojas. You could maybe put back Marsh in left field, leave Rojas in center. But then looking back at the bench, do you go Clemens or Dahl as kind of a backup guy on your bench, too? That's another decision you might have to make.
Yeah, and all those decisions are better than Jay Cave.
Yeah, everything's better than Jake Cave. Clemens has been good. Like, Dahl's coming out of nowhere. But now with Merrifield, that's another interesting thing. That's a twist in this whole thing because he can play the infield too. It just hasn't worked out.
I don't see Merrifield going anywhere because of his versatility.
Right.
So, and he's making $8 million, by the way.
Yeah, he's getting paid a nice, handsome sum right now by the Phillies. And I think they'll wait to see if he comes around a little bit more before they would make anything drastic with Merrifield. But because of the utility role that he does play, he can play multiple positions instead of just the outfield or just the infield. I think he has a spot on this roster no matter how bad he is, so far this season. So
well, and it's depth stuff. If Stott got hurt, he could play second. I know you have Sosa. But, let's say Trey Turner had a setback and Sosa had to stay at short. Stott got hurt. Now you have Merrifield. Now you can play Cody Clemens there as well, but you don't want him playing against left-handed pitching most likely. You have Merrifield that can play third. Merrifield can play center. Merrifield can play left. So Merrifield, I think, stays in some capacity. I just think his role is not what probably he thought it was going to be.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I think it hasn't panned out the way the Phillies want it or Merrifield's really want it. And the emergence of Edmundo Sosa with Trey being out, I mean, you can't really take Edmundo off the field at this point. He's been so good. So, guys are stepping up, though, throughout the majority of the bench, which is really cool to see. Dahl come up hitting a big home run last night. We'll see what we get from him. This is all based upon if Dahl continues to hit very well, then you run into, it's a good problem to have when you have guys coming out of nowhere hitting home runs and getting on base for you. I mean, that's a huge deal. So we'll see how that kind of rounds out for the Phillies as the year goes on. Listen, they're tied for the best record in baseball with the Yankees. They don't have to make a ton of decisions right at this second. All right, moving to nugget number 4. Now, Major League Baseball has another issue on its hands, the gambling problem. Another list of players coming out today, according to Jeff Passan, Padres infielder Tucupita Marcano. He's been banned from Major League Baseball for violating the league's gambling policy. And then 4 other players, including a minor league player for the Phillies, Jose Rodriguez, also got suspensions for a year or more. So, Mike, so I just have written on my Nuggets notes right here, how. How do you bet on bet? You know the rules by this point. Across Major League Baseball, the NBA, NFL, you know at this point you can't bet on games. Like, I don't understand why these players can't just put their phones down and not bet a couple $100 and lose out on hundreds of thousands and millions from their own paychecks. It just makes no sense.
Yeah, it makes no sense, and it's not going to end. This is going to only get worse, and it's only, the big thing is, when's the next big one going to happen? These are small fish. When's the big pond coming? All right, when's the big one coming? When's there's the big scandal of fixing games and all that stuff? It's only inevitable. And Greeny asked an interesting question today. He says, I don't know if it's because of the access. It's only, this is coming out because of the access. That doesn't mean people wouldn't have been betting games. But the paper trail would be a lot harder to find if they were doing it the old-fashioned way. Now, it's so easy just to pop on your phone, put that out there.
Yeah, it's so easy with all the apps nowadays. You just go right on your phone, boom, place a bet. You're seeing this across all the sports. You would think it might sink in a little bit. Don't place a $10 bet on another game or something. Like, you're going to get caught. I just don't, it just makes no sense to me why it continues to happen. And it's going to continue to happen. Unfortunately, it will continue to happen. A big lifetime ban handed down today. It's not only
going to continue to happen, I think you're going to get to a point where a big scandal is going to come from it.
Yeah, I think so too. And we kind of saw a decent-sized scandal with the best player in baseball and Shohei Ohtani and the interpreter. I mean, he just pled guilty to fraud and all this stuff. Like, it's very, very fishy with all the stuff going on too.
Yeah, that was massive. $44 million that he lost. He was down. I mean, it's only going to get worse. Put it that way.
That stuff is incredibly nuts to me. But yeah, a couple more players handed down suspensions for gambling on their own sports and other sports as well. So we're going to see and stay on this story, I guess, and it's just going to continue to happen. We'll be there for it, Mike.
All right, there's Nick's Nuggets for today on this Tuesday edition of the Sports Bash. Nick will be hosting on Friday at the LPGA over there with Ryan. They'll be live at the LPGA right outside hole number 1 for the entire event on Friday. And, of course, you can hear that all right here on the Sports Bash. Nick's Nuggets are back tomorrow with Josh filling in here on the Sports Bash. All right, Nick, take care, man.
All right, Mike. Have a great trip, man. We'll talk.
All right. There's Nick Earnshaw. He is the host of the Shift podcast and the producer of the Locker Room Weekends here on 97.3 ESPN. I'm Mike Gill. This is the Sports Bash live on 97.3 ESPN and the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app. You can check out the app in the Apple Store, Google Play, and, of course, we are live streaming video on the X platform. Use the hashtag SBLive at 973 ESPN. Follow us there on Twitter X. He asked a question about James Bradberry. Do you still want James Bradberry if he's going to be a safety? Look, if he can play, I have no problem. I think my question would be, can he still play? I don't know that he can play safety. I think the Eagles are kind of doing him a little disservice, a little dirty here. Hey, we're not even going to give you a chance to show that you have anything left in the tank. That's still to come tonight on the Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN. But coming up, we're going to go to Eagles training camp, or OTAs, I should say. Not quite training camp just yet, but we're going to go to training camp. OTAs with John McMullen. Johnny Mac's going to join us on the other side. He was up there today. We'll get his perspective on what he saw from OTAs today, including the decision to put James Bradberry at safety today. Is that a legitimate possibility? Could James Bradberry play safety this season? That's coming up with John McMullen from Birds 365 here on the Sports Bash live on 97.3 ESPN, the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app, and streaming live on the X platform at 973 ESPN. Use the hashtag SBLive.
This is the Sports Bash with Mike Gill on 97.3 ESPN and the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app. Now live from inside the Ocean Casino Resort studio, here's Mike Gill.
All right, just after 5, Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN. You know, the Eagles at OTAs today, it's tough to make news when you're not wearing pads, but the Eagles did a little bit of that. They made some news today. James Bradberry showed up. I don't know if that was a surprise or not, but he was there, but he was not playing the position that he normally plays. There's so many peels of the onion here. We're going to talk more about it with John McMullen, Birds 365 on the Jacob Media YouTube channel, weekday mornings at 8. Here on the Sports Bash Live right now on 97.3 ESPN. And John, I don't know, were you surprised that Bradberry showed up today?
No, not surprised. I mean, you know, as long as he wasn't released or traded, he was going to show up because, you know, you get fined nowadays if you don't show up. And unlike the old days, you can't waive those fines. You can't sort of say, don't worry about it, don't show up. So under the new CBA, you pretty much have to show up. And he's a member of the team, and he's a professional, and he's always been a professional. So I assumed he would show up for mandatory minicamp if the Eagles still had him on the roster. Now, the surprise was the curveball of Nick Sirianni just kind of threw it out there. Oh, he's going to play safety. And, you know, you can look at that a couple of ways. I mean, my first thought is, hey, rest of the NFL, look at how versatile this guy is. He can play the corner, played in the nickel last year. Now we're going to play him in safety. But we never got to see it. I was very interested. Hurt himself in individual drills, was in the injury tent for a while, came out, seems fine because he watched practice, but he didn't work in the team drills. So, you know, if you want to be a conspiracy theorist, maybe that was a wink. Hey, go in the injury tent for a few minutes. Let's pretend you have a groin and let's kick this thing back to training camp and try to work out a trade.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much here. I mean, if you're James Bradberry and you show up, and of course, and I agree, like he was going to show up because of all that stuff, but, you know, I didn't know if the Eagles were like, hey, you know, don't bother showing up. You know, did they want him to show up? He shows up, and you're basically saying I got no shot to win my job? Like, is that what you're telling me? I have no shot to show you that, hey, I had a down year, or maybe the system scheme, we didn't see eye to eye. Vic Fangio runs you know, he's more of a zone guy. That's more my style. Like, are you surprised that they started this off by not even considering him?
No, I think that's the wink part. I mean, I think both sides realize that his future's probably elsewhere. And, you know, I agreed. I mentioned on my show, probably with you, Mike, and I said I thought, you know, if the draft went a different way and say they, you know, Pittsburgh didn't take Faltano and the Eagles drafted him, I thought, you know, this would be a perfect defense for James to try to have a bounce-back year. But the board fell the way it fell. They got not only Quinyon Mitchell, but then they got Cooper DeJean in the second round. So at that point, you know, the writing is on the wall. We're not even talking about Kaylee Ringo is a second-year player with a huge upside, had a tremendous day today. was the player of the day. Isaiah Rodgers has been great this spring. So all of a sudden the Eagles are really deep at corner. They don't need them at corner. They're not as deep at safety. So, from that perspective, you say, maybe it makes some sense, but I think it's more about increasing that versatility for a potential trade partner down the road. But yeah, he's not. It's unfortunate, but when the NFL talks about being a meritocracy, that's a bunch of what, because so many other things come into it. When you draft somebody with the 22nd pick and you draft somebody with the 40th pick, even if Bradbury's better right now, it's not going to matter.
You said he might have a future elsewhere. Does that mean another team, or do you think that he profiles as a safety?
No, I don't think he does. I mean, Nick mentioned Charles Woodson, who's a Hall of Fame player and started at corner and then played the slot and then played in the safety. That's one of the great defensive backs of all time. He was very physical. Ronnie Lott, a lot of people forget, started at cornerback before moving to safety. And I just, it's a different game from that perspective. You almost can't be as physical as those guys in today's game, so maybe it's not as quite the kind of bit of emphasis. But when you think about safety, you think about a short tackler and some physicality. And James strikes me as an outside zone corner. I think that's what he is. That's what he does best. And when he ultimately does find another team, that's where they'll use him. I don't think there's any doubt about it. He's a great zone corner.
Yeah, which is why it's a little surprising that this has kind of come to, hey, go over and play safety. That being said, he's over at safety because the Eagles have a lot of corners. What does that corner room look like out in the field today?
Yeah, like I said, Ringo was just tremendous, and he was the starting corner opposite Darius Slay. Everybody was there today with the exception of Landon Dickerson. Everybody available, who's not hurt. And Landon's absence was excused. So no issues from that standpoint. And Kaylee Ringo got the start outside corner ahead of Isaiah Rodgers, who was great at the OTAs, ahead of obviously Quinyon Mitchell, ahead of Cooper DeJean, and even if you want to throw Bradbury. And he was two great reps on deep throws, one to John Ross. He was running stride for stride with a 4-2 guy, and Paris Campbell is a 4-3 guy. He just easily, because he's a 4-3 guy himself, so he easily can run with them. He's got everything you want with an outside corner, 6'2", very long, can play the ball, had a couple PBUs, and even A.J. Brown. And this is when I really started to perk up because I'm a big Kaylee Ringo fan. And the truth, to tell you the truth, the reason why is because A.J. Brown told me he was going to be really good. And that means something to me. And even A.J. got him once on a comeback route, but he was right there. He was right in A.J.'s hip, and you can see the talent, and he's very young. He's younger than Quinyon Mitchell because he was so young when he came in. Really, really big upside for Kaylee Ringo.
When the other two would be Mitchell and DeJean, where did they kind of find themselves today?
Well, outside, Quinyon started with the second team. He was on the second team with Isaiah Rodgers. Cooper was on the third team. They both, though, got Vic Fangio unveiled sort of his big nickel look, and typically we think of that as three safeties. Well, it was an extra corner with Quinyon Mitchell and Cooper DeJean, although you could argue with Cooper the versatility could be safety, could be corner, could be slot corner, but to see Quinyon Mitchell in that role was a bit of a surprise and an interesting twist. So, it's June. He's throwing stuff against the wall, but if you need coverage, the four corners on the field at one time were Slay, Ringo, Maddox, and Quinyon Mitchell, which was a unique look, along with two safeties as well.
John McMullen from Burst 365, weekday mornings at 8 a.m. on the Jacob Media YouTube channel. And, of course, the Eagles OTA started today. A little news and notes, starting with James Bradbury at safety. He was there. He will play safety. By the way, did anybody see or talk? Is he excited about this? Like, is he all board?
No, he did not. This time of year, we don't get to go in the locker room, so we're at the mercy of the Eagles, who bring some players out to us, and obviously they didn't bring James out to us. I think he'd like to talk to us, to be honest, but this is a situation where, they probably want to keep things under wraps as much as possible until they both sides figure out what's going to happen. But I would say it's very, very unlikely that if you think about September 6th in Brazil, I don't think it's likely at all that James Bradbury's on this team by that point.
All right. Let's the linebacker position, Devin White, obviously got Nakobe Dean in there, but the one guy was Zach Baun. Everybody was talking about him. Was he a factor at all today, or did you get any read at the linebacker spot?
Yeah, he and Devin continued to get most of the first team reps at linebacker, but Nakobe this is only the second practice has been back, so they're sort of letting him dip his toes into the pool. He got some first team reps, mainly working on the second team. I think the goal is to get Nakobe Dean as the starting middle linebacker, Devin White as the off-ball linebacker, the weak side linebacker, and Zach Baun will kind of push him. I think ultimately that's where the Eagles are going. But yeah, it's kind of interesting because when the Eagles first signed Zach Baun, there was a lot of comparisons with his college teammate, Andrew Van Ginkel, similar players. And we got to talk to Zach today, and he was talking about tapping into Van Ginkel. Had a great season playing for Vic Fangio last year, but more in that edge role as a hook defender, he likes to call it, where it's that fans love when they drop into coverage, the pass rushers. But Van Ginkel was really good at it, and we thought, and Howie, and the reason why is because Howie sort of intimated that they're trying to replicate what Vic was able to do with Van Ginkel in Miami, and all of a sudden Vic gets him here and he says, I think he's an all-ball linebacker. And Zach said he can play both, and it's an interesting player. But right now he's taking those first team reps at weak side linebacker, and he's looked good. He's looked solid. He hasn't made a lot of mistakes, and the defense has certainly outplayed the offense to this point. Of course, everybody's in pajamas, as Bobby King would say.
Speaking of the offense, there was a mammoth man playing left guard today. Was that a bit of a surprise?
Yeah, a little bit, because he is, as you mentioned, Mekhi Becton's 6'8", so you have him playing left guard. Landon obviously wasn't there. And Landon's 6'6", and Tyler's 6'5", 6'6", Tyler Steen. So you say, well, what's the difference between 6'6" and 6'8"? It doesn't seem like much on paper, but boy, it looks like a lot more in person, because Mekhi Becton, blocks out the sun. And have him playing inside is interesting. But, Lane Johnson mentioned today, we got to get this guy on the field. And, a lot of people are speculating how concrete is Tyler Steen's hold on that right guard position. Well, the fact that they gave Mekhi Becton reps at left guard indicates they'll give him reps at right guard. Mm-hmm. And they might want to get him on the field because he's got tremendous talent. But long way to go before that sort of unfolds over the summer.
Yeah, that was a little surprising, and for two reasons. One, Dickerson wasn't there, so somebody had to go to that spot. But if you're going to pop him in at left guard, does that mean then he has a shot to be, as you kind of hinted at, in that right guard competition?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, and look, it's Tyler's job to lose, but, he could lose it. I go back to the Super Bowl season when Isaac Seumalo was a young player, and the Eagles wanted him to win at the time the left guard spot. And he was a starter early in the season, didn't play well, and they benched him for Chance Warmack, who didn't play well, and then they benched him for Stefan Wisniewski, who sort of held down the fort and was the starter in the Super Bowl. I could see something similar happen here with some of the veterans, not only Mekhi, but they signed a new guy who's got 36, 37 starts in the NFL. Matt Hennessy's here if he can stay healthy. So there's a bunch of veteran sort of safety nets if they want to go that route. And certainly the most talented is Mekhi Becton. I mean, this guy was a top-level draft pick, a lot of injury problems. But, I mean, at some point, if you're the quarterback, you need a throwing lane. And Jalen Hurts isn't Justin Herbert. He's not 6'6", or Josh Allen or somebody with that tremendous height. So you could see that becoming a problem at some point.
Maybe not today, but does Max Scharping fit into this guard spot at all?
Yeah, well, he's 38 starts. He had 33 in the regular season plus 5 more in the playoffs. So, he's got extensive starting experience in the NFL. And if, Tyler Steen falters and Mekhi Becton isn't a guard and is more of a tackle, which he certainly is more of a tackle, but, doesn't feel comfortable at guard. You could see him sort of being that Stefan Wisniewski of a guy. He's not going to wow you, but he understands how to play the position, and he's probably not going to hurt you either.
Yeah, so it looks like they have beefed up the guard competition there with Becton now, which there was some, questions about, some speculation that could happen, obviously. And then, of course, they brought in Scharping this weekend. I guess that was Monday, right? Did they sign him, Max?
Yeah, yesterday. Yeah, so, it was interesting, the eve of minicamp, the timing of it. And, it indicates they weren't happy with what they saw at the backup spots, and some of the guys who, maybe Hennessy isn't healthy. Trevor Keegan, a lot of people, put way too much on a 5th-round pick, as they often do. And he's probably not ready. And Darian Kennard, some of the guys, the futures guys, they're probably not ready. So you go out and sign a veteran who, again, is not going to wow you. Down the fort if need.
We got you, John. You were breaking up there for a second.
Yeah, I got you. Yeah. Hopefully you got me.
Yeah,
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I got you. Yeah, you were left for a second there, but you're back now. John McMullen, Birds 365. Eagles OTAs continuing today. And I guess the one guy who had a pretty good week last week was Isaiah Rodgers. Was he a standout again today?
Yeah, he did play well, but he got knocked down to the second team. I'm like, whoa, that's harsh. That tells you how good. He played so well in the OTAs open to the media, right, and made so many splash plays and coverage plays. But, I questioned, and I mentioned, when you were on my show, I mentioned you have to understand what's going on with OTAs, who's there, who isn't there. One of the practices, Slay was there, wasn't at the other. Ringo missed the first one. And that was my whole point. If Ringo was there, well, he's probably the starting corner because they're going to defer to the player that's been here. And that's what they did with everybody back. And Ringo was sort of the player of the day. So if you ask me the player of the day in all 3 practices, it was right corner, right corner, right corner. It just happened to be Rodgers, and then Ringo.
Yeah. Well, I know you and everybody else is keeping an eye on that room because there's a lot of guys in there. Everybody seems to have a flavor that they like. Some like Rick, some like Ringo. Obviously, the rookies are in the mix there as well. Everybody always loves that. And I guess Bradbury's not. I guess Bradbury's not.
No, he's not. He's not in the mix. He's not. Yeah, I wish he was because I like James personally, and I think he's a really good player, and I think he'd have a bounce back season in Vic Fangio's scheme. But when you draft a guy 22nd overall, when you draft a guy 40th overall, who the owner happens to love. When you have a Kaylee Ringo, who's, A.J. Brown raves about, when you have these types of players, they're young, they have significant upsides, and it's more than just about 1 year and things like that. So they're trying to get those younger guys up to speed as quickly as possible.
Anybody else that's getting a shot here that stands out? I know Ross is there. We obviously know that he's kind of, I don't know, would you consider him a long shot?
Yeah, I don't know if he is a long shot because the group kind of falls off a cliff after AJ and Devontae, the wide receiver group. And, it's wide open. Paris Campbell is getting the most reps with the first team. And certainly they'll default to him, but he's not loud. He's not stood out all that well. Jacob Harris was probably the best of the, whatever you want to call it, the lower tier grouping of receivers, but he got hurt, and he's missed the last 2 practices. So, Joseph Nada continues to have trouble getting separation. Aniyah Smith has been hurt, and he finally came back, and he dropped his first 2 punts. He dropped his first pass attempt today. So he's, going through those rookie troubles. They have some issues when it comes to depth at wide receiver. And the guy who looks most like a professional receiver is John Ross. So I don't know how, he's got his own significant injury history that he's dealt with that turned him from a top 10 pick into a guy who had to retire way too early. But he's looked okay. But they have some issues at backup receiver. No question about that.
Yeah, no question about it. If A.J. Brown or Devontae Smith got hurt, they probably don't even have an answer who the next guy would be.
No, and it wouldn't be good. But you can't replace players like that. So it's not like you can get another Pro Bowl guy as the third receiver, but you should be able to have something a little bit better than what they have right now.
Gotcha. Well, John, OTAs are back. It's good to catch up with you, buddy. I'll be on with John tomorrow at 8:20 on Birds 365. Then I'm off to London, so I will not be around for the rest of the week. You get me on my day that I'm flying, but I'm not leaving till a little later, so I figured we could have a little Birds.
Yeah, we are. Phillies game?
I'm going to the Phillies game. Yes, I am.
Nice.
Yes, I am. But
nice. I didn't know that.
Talk a little Birds with you in the morning before I go.
All right, sounds good. Appreciate it, Mike.
As always, John McMullen, everybody, here on the Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN, the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app powered by First Bank of Seattle City, streaming live on the X platform at 973 ESPN. Use the hashtag SB Live to get involved. I'm Mike Gill. This is the Sports Bash. Yesterday, earlier today, I should say, we were talking about the Reese Hoskins. He got the big standing ovation. Well, yesterday we said he was going to get the ovation. So then today we talked about it, how he got the ovation. Earlier this morning on Unsportsmanlike, my buddy Evan Cohen had something to say about it. You'll hear from that coming up next on the Sports Bash. Plus today's big 3 are in the house. That's all coming up on the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN.
We have the perfect.
This is the story of the one. As head of maintenance at a concert hall, he knows the show must always go on. That's why he works behind the scenes, ensuring every light is working, the HVAC is humming, and his facility shines. With Grainger's supplies and solutions for every challenge he faces, plus 24/7 customer support, his venue never misses a beat. Call quickgrainger.com or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Traffic.
You come with me.
The Sports Bash with Mike Gill on 97.3 ESPN and the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app.
All right, 5:30 Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN, the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app. I'm Mike Gill. We've got Big Three coming up. We've got the NBA Finals is going to get started sometime this year, right? Are they just bypassing the NBA Finals?
NBA Finals are Thursday. Yeah.
They don't play the Stanley Cup Finals till Saturday.
Yeah.
Good grief.
We've only had baseball all week, Mike.
Yeah, a little baseball this week. I'm looking forward to the game tonight. Now, last night at the bank, you had Dan Baker. Can we get the Dan Baker now betting for the Phillies? No, he wasn't playing for the Phillies last night, but it sounded like he was playing for the Phillies when Rhys Hoskins was introduced by Dan Baker before his first at bat in the second inning.
Now batting for Milwaukee, number 12, designated hitter, Rhys Hoskins.
By the way, I feel like we don't give Dan Baker enough. I mean, I know that he is beloved, but Dan Baker just adds to all of it with just the super enunciations and all of his like pauses. He just makes it all so much more. So the crowd goes crazy last night. No problem with this, right? We all knew it was going to happen. Now, people were talking about this, were they going to cheer or boo Rhys Hoskins? Nobody in their right mind thought the Phillies fans were going to boo Rhys Hoskins. Like 0% chance that was going to happen. Now, he comes up in the seventh inning and he faces Zach Wheeler with the score 3-0, and that's when this happened.
Which I'm sure they've done that a lot.
Ball hit well out to left field. Back is Dahl, and it is gone. And Rhys Hoskins, as he did 77 times as a member of the Philadelphia Phillies, goes yard here at Citizens Bank Park. And it's a 3-1 ball game. It's got to be a weird feeling.
He is trying so hard.
So I hear is it me or do I hear a bunch of boos in there? I feel like there's been some mixed signaling about how the Phillies fans reacted to the home run, because to me, it sounded like Hoskins got booed rounding the bases last night.
It was clearly booing going on. There was a spattering of people cheering, and the television broadcasts, both of them, did zero in on the Phillies fan who caught the home run ball, and that fan was very happy. But the majority of the sound coming through the television broadcast was boos. It was not cheers.
Well, my friend Evan Cohen from Unsportsmanlike tagged me in a post. He was talking about the way the Phillies fans handled this and then took an unnecessary shot at the Phillies fans when he said this.
So when Rhys Hoskins gets up there last night for the Brewers, before he actually hits, and they say, now batting for Milwaukee, Rhys Hoskins, standing ovation, he tips the cap, etc. The moment a pitch is thrown, he's a Brewer, not a Philly. When he hits a home run down 3-0, you do not cheer for him because that's the player, not the person. You try to separate the two. What the Phillies fans did last night actually prove they're not as good fans as I thought they were.
Wow.
What?
So I'm going to have to take another listen in some capacity. Can I get, I did find this video here of the call. I don't know if this is the Brewers call or the Phillies call, but I just found this posted by MLB on X. So let's take a listen to another call of Hoskins hitting the homer in the seventh.
Which I'm sure they've done that a lot.
Ball hit well out to left field. Back is Dahl, and it is gone. And Rhys Hoskins, as he did 77 times as a member of the Philadelphia Phillies, goes yard here at Citizens Bank Park. And it's a 3-1 ball game. It's got to be a weird feeling.
He is trying so hard not to laugh.
All right, so getting the video of it does help here a little bit. So it clearly sounds like boos are audible, but the video is showing certain people kind of standing and giving him the clap.
That's the point I was making, is that
So I think that's where Evan Cohen is saying weak sauce by that, but I think that is more of the minority.
First of all, it's more of the minority. Second of all, the television broadcast, part of the picture they're showing is the guy who caught the ball and the people around him. Is the guy who caught the ball supposed to Wrigley Field it and say, I'm going to throw it back now because Rhys Hoskins hit the home run?
A lot of times that ends up happening is the guy catches the ball, and then the Phillies fans, they're trying to, get you to throw the ball back, which has kind of become somewhat of, the Wrigley Field thing has kind of morphed its way into Philadelphia. When the road guy hits the home run, you throw it back in. So was that guy getting booed?
I mean, if I'm the guy who caught the ball, I don't care what anyone thinks. I'm keeping it, and I'm hoping somebody comes up to me and asks me, do you want to meet Rhys Hoskins after the game? You know?
Right, Hoskins wants the ball because it's the home run he hits back in Philadelphia.
Correct. Like, you don't throw that ball back, and you should be happy you caught that ball because that's a once-in-a-lifetime moment.
Well, the
audible
of the fans. Does it sound to the listeners out there like boos, or does it sound like they were cheering Hoskins?
To me, it sounds like 80% booing and 20% cheer.
Yeah. Now, I have new headsets on because I broke mine yesterday. Well, I didn't break them. They finally just died after years and years of hosting the show. So I'm wearing new headphones, which, by the way, the sound is a lot more clear, but I don't like it.
You don't like the clearness?
Well, it's just a weird dynamic.
It's a weird sensation.
I'm just not used to these new headphones yet. I need to get different ones. But
it's a new sensation.
In excess. I heard more boos audibly. This is like, what was that couple of years ago, like the dress, like, you heard that people heard it different. Like the audible, remember that?
Oh, you mean the blue dress, the black dress? Or
yeah, something to that. Like, but people heard something differently.
Yes.
Is this what's going on here? Like, I heard more boos. Did Evan Cohen, is he hearing more cheers and then giving the Phillies fans a hard time?
I think Evan Cohen likes to find reasons to give Philly fans a hard time.
He tagged me. He could be watching right now. I don't know. He could be on the X platform watching. But he tagged me, which I appreciate, and I listened to the audible, the audio of the home run. Now, the Phillies cheered him, which he says is okay. Before the game, when you do the starting lineups and or your first at bat, which his first at bat came up, he got the elongated cheer. He's saying once the game has started, the cheers go away. You are now an opposing player. And because it's perceived that he was cheered in the home run, that the Phillies fans are weaker than he gave them credit for.
Which is a horrible take, because the problem with that perspective is that what he is saying is that he wants Philly fans to be continuously merciless, to which he would also probably criticize them for. I would like to know, did Evan Cohen dislike when the Philly fans cheered Trey Turner last year when he had that first home game back from the rough road trip?
Yeah, I don't know. See, I mean, listen, I agree with, like, in that case, I'm not cheerful or happy or anything that Hoskins hit the home run. Like, I think his premise is correct. Once the game has started, you're now the opposing player.
No, I think we all agree with the initial premise, but his interpretation of the events that happened led to a very irrational conclusion.
Yes, I mean, if he's saying that because now I don't know that they did cheer him, but there were people clapping. You can certainly see them in the video. Yes.
Yes, and I think that is probably what he's referencing. He's not listening to the fact that there was, I would say, if I threw out a number, 80% booing going on. There was a much more predominant boo than anything else.
Before I saw the video, it sounded clear to me that they were booing. Now I see the video, I can see people clapping.
Right.
Yes.
But I think some of those people, just because a few people are clapping doesn't mean the whole Philadelphia sports fan base should be quantified a certain way.
Yeah. It was the Yanni and Laurel.
Is that what it was?
Yeah, it was the, Yanni, Laurel.
The audio, right.
Yes. So I don't know that this was similar, but
like I said, I can't speak for Evan Cohen, but he has been on your show enough that I do get the sense from him that he does have a negative view of Philadelphia fans more often than not.
I don't know that. I can't confirm or deny that. I know he said before that when he saw the Sixers play in Miami, he thought they were going to win the championship.
He did.
So I think he's being...
But that's the team, not the fans.
No, I'm saying, but if you had a bias against, as you're, I think, hinting at, then you wouldn't...
you could be an objective analyst when it comes to the team.
Well, give me an example of what he has said that is making you feel this way.
Well, it goes back to last fall when he made the comments he did about Philadelphia sports fans before the Harden trade happened. How the Sixers were going into the season with Harden still in the organization, and he talked about the consternation of Philly fans.
Okay, so you don't think he likes Philly fans?
I think he just has a bias. I think that, someone like him...
Because his comment was not as good as I thought they were. So he's saying in the same breath that he thought they were these great fans, but this action is making him rethink that.
Well, I don't know if he thought they were
great fans. So that's contradicting
fans.
What you're saying.
I don't know if he thought they were great fans. I've never heard him overtly say Philly fans are great fans.
All right, well, I do agree with his premise. You don't cheer the guy if he hits the home run. That's what I would go with there.
Now, I thought was interesting was because you had Michelle Smallman on, Mike.
Did she become a Philadelphia fan? We never got that answer.
We haven't, but you heard her reaction in the audio where she was appalled by Evan Cohen describing the Philly fans as basically not good fans.
She thought it was weak sauce.
So, and apparently according to social media, if you read the Twitter sphere, apparently her opinion was strongly against Evan Cohen's. So, now we should also note that Michelle Smallman is a huge baseball fan. She's a diehard baseball fan, so maybe her perspective as a baseball fanatic might be influencing her opinion on this as well because she's from St. Louis, right? So in St. Louis is a diehard baseball town, and they loved when Albert Pujols came home after going to the Angels, right? So, I mean, maybe her perspective is a little bit of, hey, we love our guys, and this is who baseball people are.
Yeah, and again, I don't know that it's confirmed that the Philly fans, majority-wise, actually did cheer. It sounded more audible boo.
I think there were more boos than cheers, but as I said, the cameras focused on the cheering people.
Okay. All right. What else you got?
Mike, I got a couple other stories to bang at them real quick here. So, Lamar Jackson is not at off-season training activities, which means, Mike, he will be missing out on $750,000. He is saying thanks, but no thanks to this payday, to which John Harbaugh today told the media, and I'm quoting, "I am a coach. You know my answer to that. This is what we do." And he moved on to the next question. So, Mike, your reaction to the Ravens basically not wanting to talk about it, but Lamar Jackson saying, you know what, I don't need $750,000.
Good for him. He negotiated his own contract. That would be essentially the commission that his agent would have made. So he's saying, I negotiated my own contract. I can subvertly not show up there. I mean, nobody wants to talk about this, and I don't know that the coaches want to come out and say, it's not that big of a deal. He doesn't need to be here. Or at the same side, he doesn't want to say he needs to be here. There's no reason to start friction in June, I guess is the answer here.
That's true. There's no reason to start it, but it is perplexing that a guy who...
Sure, I'm sure they're not happy about it.
...was so intent on saying, I want to negotiate this contract, I want every dollar I can get, and telling the organization, I'm going to be there for the off-season training activities, and literally building his contract that he's incentivized to be there. He's just like, nah, never mind.
That part of it's odd. That if you put in there incentives to show up.
He put in there, not an agent. He put in there.
And then didn't show up. Who Lamar Jackson, you're saying?
Lamar Jackson.
Why am I not seeing this anywhere?
I'm reading this right from the Athletics. I don't know if it's not on the main feed or something, but.
Yeah. All right.
I know McAfee talked about it a little bit earlier today as well. I thought it was funny. I can't play the audio, but Darius Butler basically said, this is some weird bleep. to McAfee. So, got a couple guys who play in the NFL basically saying this is weird.
Because I'm seeing video of him showing up at OTAs today.
He did not show up yesterday, which means he misses out on the money.
I'm saying, I don't know about, I'm saying he showed up today though, right? So did he just not show up yesterday? He showed up today. It says right here, he is back at Ravens OTA. This was from this morning.
According to The Athletic, the contract says that his absence from voluntary OTAs results in the forfeiture of the money.
Yeah, no, that part of it, it says, I'm saying, but he showed up today at OTA, so he is back at the OTAs, but I guess, because you said voluntary OTAs, why would you get fined for not being at voluntary?
Because his contract stated that he needed to be at all off-season OTAs to collect the money.
Yeah, now this says, Lamar Jackson didn't want to pay agent fees, which is fine. A good agent, however, could have gotten the Ravens not to tie $750,000 per year for showing up to off-season workouts. So he probably didn't negotiate that. He probably just took the money.
Right,
he didn't know the fine print, which is what Andrew Brandt has talked about a lot. That's the benefit of having an agent, that they find those little fine prints.
Right. The agent's going to protect you from losing the money.
Yeah. I was going to say, I would have thought this would have been a bigger story but he showed up today. So that's why it hasn't gotten to the point.
Right. More spin. Shams Charania, Mike, is reporting that the Lakers frontrunner for the job is J.J. Redick because, quote, sources have described the Lakers officials as infatuated with Redick and his potential as a coach. Your thoughts?
Yeah, well, this is, all tied to the whole thing that's been going on for weeks now. Him and LeBron doing this podcast together. They're talking basketball for people who are smart basketball fans.
Right.
So, hey, look, if LeBron stays in, that's why the Lakers, I don't think, are making any moves here. They got to find out whether, do they want to hire because they think he's this great mind, or do they want to hire him because LeBron wants to hire him? If LeBron's gone and he doesn't get hired, we'll know the answer.
Which leads me into my next topic, Mike, which is today on the latest edition of Mind the Game podcast, LeBron James told J.J. Redick about Kyrie Irving, quote, I'm so bleeping happy and proud to watch him continue his growth, but I'm so bleeping mad at the same time that I'm not his running mate anymore, unquote. What are your thoughts on LeBron overtly coming out and saying, I wish I was still Kyrie?
Good for him, man, for mentioning that. Kyrie has kind of reshaped his whole image here in these playoffs. And maybe LeBron is yearning for a better running mate than he currently has.
Well, his current running mate certainly plays less games than Kyrie does right now.
That's true. That's true. And, listen, that podcast thing, how weird is that? What if he doesn't get the job? Do they keep doing the podcast? Hey, man, I tried.
What if J.J. Redick gets the job and LeBron leaves?
Well, that's what I'm saying is if LeBron leaves, does J.J. get the job? Or is he only in the running because of LeBron? Would his name even be on the radar?
Now, of course it's only on the radar because of that.
Well, he did get a job interview in Charlotte. This isn't it's
true.
The only, it's not the first time.
But would the Lakers consider it?
They took Darvin Ham.
Franchise.
It's not like Darvin Ham. I know he was an assistant, but,
Ham was an assistant. Yeah, he was kind of already known, at least, so. Mike, also, Christian McCaffrey resetting the running back market, signing a 2-year contract extension. He will be averaging now $19 million over the next 2 years when the new deal activates.
The second big deal for him.
He will be an added $8 million over what he was scheduled to make this year and next year.
Getting out in front, much like the Eagles do there, right?
That's right.
Yeah, and he resets that running back market again after, everybody. Well, by the way, Saquon got a huge deal this offseason, so.
He did, but those are 3+ more today on the Sports Bash.
All right, there you go. Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN. Now, I would invite Evan Cohen to defend himself tomorrow, but I won't be here. So if Evan Cohen's watching on the X platform, I agree with the take. I'm just not sure if the take is valid based on the audio that sounds more boo than cheer. I don't know how we break this, and I won't be here tomorrow to invite Evan on. But Evan, if you're watching, I think your take is right, but I think your read on the play might be wrong. Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN, the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app. Final thoughts of the show are coming up next here on the Sports Bash.
For the ones who know safety isn't a catchphrase, it's a culture. And the ones who help make sure everyone makes it home safe. For the safety-minded who watch everyone's backs, Grainger offers supplies and solutions for every industry, as well as safety assessments and training to keep your facilities safe and your people safer. Call, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
The Sports Bash with Mike Gill on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app.
All right, get ready to get out of here. We'll close the show out. Phillies lineup tonight, same as last night. No change to the lineup. Dahl is back in left field tonight. David Dahl with the dinger last night. That was something that got cheered definitively. You want to hear a cheer? Dave Dahl's home run last night. That was definitively a cheer. I don't know. Does Rhys Hoskins get another cheer tonight?
No, I think that ship has sailed.
First time up?
They got it out of the system.
They got it out of the system, but I think it all is Dave, what's it called? Dan Baker is the maestro, though. It goes on how his cadence goes.
That's true. Now, do they not play his music again tonight?
I think the music's out.
Music.
Did they do the music the rest of the night?
No, you can't do the rest of
the night.
No,
I'm saying last night. I only noticed the first time.
I only noticed the first time, too. I didn't hear the music at all the other times he came up.
Yeah, the first time, and somebody said the only other time they've done that is for Chase Utley.
That's correct, when he came with the Dodgers.
Well, Phillies lineup tonight, same as last night, with Christopher Sanchez getting the start. Now, can I get lucky and get... Now, I don't want Sanchez, Ranger Suarez to miss his... I don't want him to be hurt, but can I miss Walker when I go to London?
What if they push Suarez back a day and put Turnbull on Saturday?
That's what I'm saying. Like, if maybe Suarez, I don't know.
The hands a little iffy, maybe push him back a day.
Yeah, like right now, Suarez is scheduled for Saturday, Walker for Sunday, Wheeler for Tuesday. They have an off day on Monday. There's no need. You could skip Walker here. They have an off day on Thursday and Friday.
Hope for the best, prepare for the worst.
Yeah. I'll be back next week. I'll be in London the next couple days, checking out the Phillies and the Mets. We'll talk all about it when I return to the Sports Bash.
For the ones who know safety isn't a catchphrase, it's a culture. And the ones who help make sure everyone makes it home safe. For the safety-minded who watch everyone's backs, Grainger offers supplies and solutions for every industry, as well as safety assessments and training to keep your facilities safe and your people safer. Call, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.